Well, good morning, everyone. If everyone could take their seats, we're going to get started here. So welcome. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone in attendance. The committee has under consideration the estimates of the Ministry of Education for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2026. I'd ask that we go around the table and have members introduce themselves for the record. Minister, please introduce the officials who are joining you at the table. So are we starting now?
You can keep going.
Oh, sorry. Pardon me. We changed that. My name is Jackie Lovely, and I'm the MLA for the constituency of Camrose and the chair of the committee. We'll begin starting to my right.
Jennifer Johnson, MLA for Lacombe-Panoka.
Miles McDougall, MLA of Calgary Fishing.
Chelsea Petrovic, MLA for Livingston McLeod.
Garth Rosal, MLA, Vermilion Lloydminster Wainwright.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Singh, MLA, Calgary East.
And you want me to introduce everybody? I'd be happy to. On my far left, Kindy Joseph, Assistant Deputy Minister of Program System Support. To my immediate left, Laura Pilipo, Deputy Minister. Myself, Dimitris Nicolaides, Minister of Education. To my right, Jeff Willen, Assistant Deputy Minister of Financial Services and Capital Planning, who's wearing a suit. And to my far right, Sarah Brennan, Executive Director of K-12 Fiscal Oversight.
Peggy Wright, MLA Edmonton Beverly Clareview.
Amanda Chapman, MLA Calgary Beddington.
Good morning, my name is David Egan. I'm the MLA for Evanston Northwest.
Sharif Haji, MLA for Edmonton Decor.
And we do not have anyone joining us online. I'd like to note the following substitutions for the record. Mr. Roswell is here for Mr. Lunty, Ms. Chapman for Member Batten, Ms. Wright for Ms. Goring as Deputy Chair. A few housekeeping items to address before we turn to the business at hand. Committee proceedings are live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. The audio and visual stream and transcripts of the meetings can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. Members participating remotely are encouraged to turn your camera on if anyone should join us via that mode while speaking, and mute your microphone when not speaking. Remote participants who wish to be placed on a speakers list are asked to email or message to the committee clerk, and members in the room should signal please to the chair. Please set your cell phones and other devices to silent for the duration of the meeting. Honourable members, the main estimates for the Ministry of Education shall be considered for 3 hours. Standing Orders 59.01 sets out the process for consideration of the main estimates in the Legislative Policy Committees. Suborder 59.016 sets out the speaking rotation for this meeting. The speaking rotation chart is available on the committee's internal website, and hard copies have been provided to the ministry officials at the table. For each segment of the meetings, blocks of speaking time will be combined, but only if both the minister and the member agree. If debate is exhausted prior for 3 hours, the minister estimates are deemed to have been considered for the time allotted in the main estimate schedule, and the committee will adjourn. Should members have any questions regarding speaking times or rotation, please email or message to the committee clerk about the process. With the concurrence of the committee, I can call a 5-minute break near the midpoint. The 3-hour clock will continue to run. Does anyone oppose having a break? All right, we'll have a little break then. Ministry officials who are present may, at the direction of the minister, address the committee. Ministry officials seated in the gallery, if called upon, have access to a microphone in the gallery area and are asked to please introduce themselves for the record prior to commenting. Pages are available to deliver notes or other materials between the gallery and the table. Attendees in the gallery may not approach the table. Space permitting, opposition caucus staff may sit at the table to assist their members. However, members have priority to sit at the table at all times. Points of order will be dealt with as they arise, and individual speaking times will be paused. However, the block of speaking time and the overall 3-hour meeting clock will continue to run. Any written material provided in response to questions raised during the main estimates should be tabled by the minister in the assembly for the benefit of all members. Finally, the committee should have the opportunity to hear both the questions and the answers without interruption during estimates debate. Debate flows through the chair at all times, including instances when speaking time is shared between a member and the minister. I would now invite the Minister of Education to begin with your opening remarks. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Great, thank you, Chair. Happy to be here today to discuss our budget and main estimates. I've introduced the officials that I have with me at the table. In the gallery, I also have Megan Eagle, Assistant Deputy Minister of System Excellence, Carla Johnson, Assistant Deputy Minister of Curriculum and Career Education, Boris Contreras, Assistant Deputy Minister of First Nation Métis Inuit Education, Zoe Cooper, Assistant Deputy Minister of Strategic Services, and Aaron Owens, Executive Director of Capital Planning. Alberta's education system is currently facing several challenges as growing communities, rising enrollment, and increasing costs are putting pressure on our schools. Our government is fully committed to ensuring students and schools have the supports that they need to be successful. I'm confident that Budget 25 responds to the challenges that we face with investments that will ensure Alberta students receive the world-class education they deserve and expect. Starting first with our operating spend, education's operating spend will reach an all-time high of $9.8 billion in 25-26, which is an increase of $426 million or 4.5% from last year. Our goal is to drive as many dollars as possible into the classroom, and we give our school authorities maximum flexibility to use these funds and manage their resources. As the province continues to grow, so too does our student population. Through Budget 25, we're making historic investments in education to address rising enrollment and deliver world-class education to our kids. Beginning next school year, we will support school boards by providing funding based on an updated 2-year average adjusted enrollment model rather than a 3-year weighted moving average. This approach will allocate funding based on 30% of a school authority's current student enrollment level and 70% of its projected enrollment for the upcoming year. This is a move that many school authorities have requested and is more responsive to growth in metro and urban jurisdictions while at the same time still shielding those authorities with declining enrollment. Over the next 3 years, we will invest more than $1.1 billion into our education system to address enrollment growth. This funding will support the hiring of more than 4,000 teachers, educational assistants, and other support staff over the next 3 years. We've also heard that rising costs of programs and services are putting a strain on school board operations. We've responded by increasing funding rates. Last summer, we increased rates by $85 million, and this will grow by another $389 million to support classroom operations. We've heard from teachers that addressing increasing classroom, complex classroom issues remains an urgent priority. To help address classroom complexity, we are providing $55 million in this budget, which is a 20% increase from what was provided last year. This funding for classroom complexity is part of a $1.6 billion investment to support specialized learning needs of students. I'm pleased to say that we are increasing all the other learner support funding grant rates by 2.32% in the 25-26 school year. In addition, Budget 25 will make sure that students are taken care of with $110 million in funding over the next 3 years to provide support for mental health, literacy and numeracy, and complex needs and autism. Supporting our youngest learners is one of the most important things that we can do. This school year, we've increased the frequency of screening for grades 1 to 3, and we've added screening for kindergarten. We've also planned future screenings for grades 4 and 5. This work is vital to giving children the literacy and numeracy skills that they need in the early formative years. These simple screening tools were developed by academic experts from across North America and are strongly supported by third-party organizations including Autism Canada and Decoding Dyslexia Alberta. Schools use the results of these screeners to identify students who need additional help building literacy and numeracy skills. And through Budget 25, we'll be providing over $40 million to support these interventions for students. Student transportation is an important part of our education system, and we are investing $487 million to support a safe transportation system for more than 335,000 students across the province. Since Budget 22, transportation funding has increased by $167 million, or 52.5%. To help with rising transportation costs, we are maintaining the school bus driver grant to support training as well as the fuel price contingency program. We also know that our school boards are facing rising internet and cybersecurity costs and threats, and we are providing an additional $10 million in funding to address these challenges. We're doing this by introducing a new school technology grant that will increase SuperNet funding rates by 20%, raising the current rate, from $800 per site to $960. We know as well that rural schools often face unique challenges such as declining enrollment and serving students across large areas. Our updated funding formula continues to shield rural school jurisdictions with declining enrollment, and our model includes several grants designed to address challenges in operating small rural schools. We've increased maintenance funding for rural school boards to support rising costs and allow them to maintain their buildings more effectively. We want rural communities to remain vibrant for rural students to continue to receive a high-quality education. Francophone schools also face challenges that are similar to rural schools, and in addition to the increased costs associated with providing equivalent minority language education, we're also increasing the Francophone Equivalency Grant by 25%. Budget 25 also provides $2 million in pre-planning in 25-26 to support advancing the readiness of Francophone school projects for future years. Curriculum implementation also remains a priority. We've recently piloted the elementary social studies curriculum in more than 500 schools this year and are looking forward to it being finalized. We're also engaging right now on development of new draft curriculum in junior high for math, social studies, physical education and wellness, and career and life management. We'll also be providing $66 million to support curriculum implementation. We're also investing in career education to make sure students have the opportunity to explore career options. This funding will help support new and existing dual credit programs, bring more collegiate schools online, and help develop partnerships. Over the next 3 years, we will be investing over $102 million to support career education programming. We're also investing to support First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students. In Budget 25, we're providing $94 million to school boards so that they can provide system, program, and instruction supports and support First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students. With respect to capital, we're also investing to build needed schools across the province. In the fall, we committed $8.6 billion to meet the province's need for school space. In Budget 25, we will kickstart additional school builds, including 30 new schools, 8 updated or replacement schools, and 3 charter schools, 41 new projects in all. 18 of these projects will be in the Calgary region and 14 in the Edmonton region. These projects will provide 14,000 new spaces in Calgary, 16,000 new spaces in Edmonton, and just about 8,000 across the rest of the province. Over the next 7 years, our goal with the school capital construction program is to build more than 100 new schools across the province, expand the use of modulars, and altogether add approximately 200,000 student spaces across the province. In closing, as we meet the challenges facing Alberta's education system, the key message that I want to leave you all with is that we are listening. We have heard the concerns of many of our education partners, our teachers, and we are listening. By changing the 3-year weighted moving average, investing more in education supports, conducting early literacy screening to ensure that our students get the right start, and by providing more career education opportunities. Working with our partners and taking action, we will face these challenges head on. The investments that we're making in Budget 25 will ensure that every student in Alberta continues to receive a world-class education. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now begin the question and answer portion of the meeting. For the first 60 minutes, members of the official opposition and Minister may speak. Honourable members, you will be able to see the timer for the speaking block in both the committee room and on Microsoft Teams. So members, would you like to combine your time with the Minister, or would you like to have block?
Happy to combine.
And Minister, what's your preference?
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Combined? Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, and all the folks who are in the room today to help answer questions as we dig into the 2025 education budget. So through the Chair, I'd like to start today by reviewing the changes to the education portion of property tax. So I know this increase to property tax isn't popular with municipalities. I think the feeling is that it's confusing for people. They get a tax bill from the city, they'll see a big increase this year, and maybe they don't understand that that increase is actually an increase to their provincial tax. So, and at the same time that we're decreasing personal income tax, we increase property tax. So on page 57 of the fiscal plan, I see a property tax increase of 392 million this year, 311 million next year, and 141 million the following year. So if my math is mathing, that's a tax increase for Albertans of 844 million over this budget cycle. Is that correct? And can the minister just walk us through that plan to increase taxes to fund education?
Yeah, I think the numbers that you mentioned there are correct. Unless Jeff or Laura kicks me under the table, then I'll assume it's not correct, but I think your numbers are correct there. So of course, the increase in property taxes, as I'm sure you know, currently just under a third, or approximately, or just under a third, I should say, of education spend, of the total education spend, is covered through property taxes. And that percentage will be increasing by 26-27. Education property tax will fund 33.4% of Alberta Education's operating spend. So the 2/3 of what we spend and what we'll continue to spend in education will come, the revenue will come from other sources. But there's, of course, a need to provide increased funding to support growing complexity in our classrooms, to support early literacy and numeracy, to support the hiring of additional teachers. And of course, the province is facing some significant economic and financial challenges and pressures, especially with the clouds of tariffs and economic uncertainty. So we need to ensure that we're in a situation where we can continue to provide stable and predictable funding to our education system.
Thank you, Minister. So unlike personal income tax, property tax is not equitably distributed because, of course, property values are much higher in some areas. So the last time I checked, Calgary had the highest property values in the province, followed by Edmonton, and then some of our smaller municipalities, Lethbridge, Red Deer, Medicine Hat, etc. Is the minister able to provide us with a comparison of how much more tax households will be paying in Calgary compared to, say, Edmonton or Lethbridge?
Yeah, I'll ask my team, excuse me, to see if they have that breakdown by municipality. I'm not sure that we do, but we'll have a close look and I'll come back to you on that piece. But we do have it. Just Calgary and Edmonton. So, but of course, as to your point, property values are quite varied and differ from different communities. So those values will be different. What we had for Calgary and Edmonton, for 25-26 Calgary homeowners with a median home value that have a home value that's in the median will experience an increase of approximately $239, and in Edmonton this will be an increase of about $92. So again, that's simply due to the variance in home values.
And, I think you answered this in your first one, but all money that comes in through that education property tax increase goes directly to education.
Yeah, that's correct. Every dollar that comes in from the education property tax goes directly to support education systems and services, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Alberta students remain the lowest funded in the country in the education budget when we adjust for population and inflation, is actually seeing a cut of $25.5 million. Why is the education property tax increasing so considerably when funding to the actual system is not?
Well, funding to the system is increasing, and I did see a recent analysis, I think it was done by CBC, that really questioned the assumption of Alberta being the lowest funded. Some interesting information there, which highlighted that we are not. And I do know that the Alberta Teachers Association, some other organizations are looking at those numbers, but I think those numbers are, in some of the ads and things that I've seen, are maybe 4 or 5 years old. And there's been significant increases in education in the Budget 23, Budget 24, and now subsequently in Budget 25. So in this budget, we're increasing spending to education by 4.5%. We're at $9.9 billion. $49 million is spent every single day a student is in school. So I certainly wouldn't characterize that as anything close to a cut. And we've changed the 3-year weighted moving average to the 2-year average adjusted enrollment, which will help provide funding to some of our fastest growing school divisions. And I think that this is definitely the right approach. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be providing a $1.1 billion increase in funding over the next 3 years, which is a significant increase in spending. And in fact, our current funding that we've provided, the 4.5%, outpaces our enrollment projection as well. And you know, within that context, I think it's also important to highlight just how our students perform. And Alberta receives the highest scores in Canada in science, in reading, in financial literacy, creative thinking. In many areas, we score the highest in Canada and among the highest in the world in our PISA international rankings and in other rankings. And so I think our education system does quite well.
Yes, I actually just read an article about the PISA scores that was interesting because the suggestion was that in Alberta it's the top 25% that is drawing the test scores up, and that we actually have a wider gap than other provinces, which was interesting. But I can't remember where I read it, but I'll find it again. I'll send it to you. So the average increase to property tax that folks will be paying is just that, you know, an average. And I know individual households will feel the strain of those increased taxes differently, depending, of course, on their property values. The Premier said recently that it's right for Calgary and Edmonton to pay more. We know those metro areas have seen the most growth and, you know, should be getting most of the new schools. But when I look at the capital project, and thinking about it that way, shouldn't we be seeing twice as many schools built in our metro areas? The way I read the plan currently, you have 16 projects, school build projects in metro areas, and 15 projects in rural areas or smaller municipalities. So if metro areas are paying the lion's share of your tax increase and experiencing the most growth in the province, why are the current capital projects distributed so evenly between metro and rural school projects? Shouldn't our metro areas be getting more schools?
Yeah, and I think the short answer to that is, I would say, you know, to stay tuned. As I mentioned, 41, we're adding 41 school projects in budget 25 that as part of the School Construction Accelerator program. We will be announcing those individual projects in the next few days. And we are determining where the schools should be built and which communities should receive the schools based on objective data and analysis. The primary consideration that we're using, of course, is enrollment pressure and utilization rates. So no surprise when we look at those variables, Calgary and Edmonton metropolitan areas have some of the highest enrollment pressures, some of the highest utilization rates, and that's where the vast majority of the school projects will land. A couple of weeks ago, of course, I announced 11 projects that were ready to move forward through the School Construction Accelerator program. 5 of those projects were in Edmonton. 3 of those projects were in Northeast Calgary, where we're seeing some significant growth. And again, more projects will be announced over the coming weeks and years as we move towards that goal of building 100 new schools over the next 7 years.
Okay, so just jump. I had a question about. Okay, so through the chair, I'm just offering up some numbers from 2024 for context, but the question relates directly to the 25 capital plan. So your 2024 capital plan had 43 school projects, 19 construction, 16 design, and 8 planning. So in the 2025 capital plan, as has been released, I see 31 announced projects, 18 construction, 6 design, and 7 planning. So is the $834 million you have allocated for the 25-26 fiscal year paying for those 31 projects, or is what you're saying that you're going to be announcing additional projects for the 25 capital plan?
I'll defer to Jeff as well, but that is to support current projects and also to support, I believe it's to support the new projects as well that we'll be announcing. But as I mentioned, we do have 41 projects in budget 25 that we will be announcing. We have announced a few projects that will be moving forward already in our rural communities and smaller cities, including a new school in Lethbridge and other projects across the province. And we will be announcing as well within the next few days the other projects that we will be building in Calgary and Edmonton as well.
Is there a reason for the change to stretching out the announcement of the projects? My understanding historically is that you came forward with a complete capital plan for the province. It usually happened in advance of this meeting, this estimates, which was nice because then we had an opportunity to ask questions about it. What's the rationale for spreading out the announcements over a few weeks the way you've done now?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but we took the same approach last year as well. And I think it's important that we're able to attend in person in respective communities, whether that's in Lethbridge or in Grand Prairie or Medicine Hat, and work with the school division and the parents and community there so that we can announce individual projects that will be coming forward for those respective school jurisdictions and provide them with that information. So obviously it does take a little bit longer to provide that information in that manner, but we want to make sure that we can involve the school boards and the communities as best as possible.
So if I understand you correctly here, so we're going to be expecting to see 10 additional projects announced as part of the 2025 capital spend.
I think it's more than that.
Because I see 31 announced right now. 31 announced, am I right?
No, I think that you're including active projects as well, current active projects. So we will be announcing. I'll give you a little insight since you're asking. We will be announcing 10 projects in the Edmonton area, and we will be announcing 16 projects in the Calgary area. And then there's the additional ones that we've already announced for our rural communities. I don't know if we have the list of those ones that we've just announced in our rural communities. But in total, those are the 41 projects that we'll be announcing.
So that accounts for the 834 million that you have accounted, or that you have allocated for the 25-26 fiscal year?
Yeah, I'll ask, Jeff wants to offer a more detailed and smarter explanation, so I'll let him do that.
I'm not sure about smart. But thank you through the chair. Again, Jeff Willen, Assistant Deputy Minister of Financial Services and Capital Planning. So the 834 million is funding a number of things. So one is it's funding previously announced projects. So we have 91 projects that are currently underway before budget 2025. Then within the School Construction Accelerator Program, we are announcing 41 school projects, which make up $81 million, including modular classrooms. And then on top of that, when you're looking at that 31 number, there were 22 additional projects that since September 2024 till budget 2025 that have been accelerated through the School Construction Accelerator Program, and that equates to a $96 million investment in 25-26. So when you total those dollars up, including some collegiate and charter school expansion, that's your $834 million investment in 25-26 across all projects, including the 41 to be announced and the investment in the 91 that were in flight.
Gotcha. Okay. What is the, through the chair, the amount for your charter and collegiate school? Do you have that as its standalone number as part of that 834?
58.
Is it 58?
Yeah, for this year, 58.
58 million this year for charter and collegiate.
Yeah.
58 million. Perfect, thank you. Where did I go? Okay. No. You threw me with all this news. See, now I had some questions about the lack of schools in Calgary, but now they're coming. They're not here yet. They're not here yet, but I guess they're coming. So I will spare you my yapping about capacity issues in Calgary. So let's just stay on capital. So we were promised that it's $8.6 billion in spending on school capital over the next 7 years. So what I see in the fiscal plan is the first 3 years has a total spend of $2.6 billion. So I'm guessing that the bulk of the spend will come in the 4 years after this current budget cycle. That's a choice, given the enormous capacity pressures that are currently facing our metro boards. So in the 25-28 fiscal plan, you're spending an average of $873 million per year on schools, which means in the 4 years following 29 to 33, you'll need to spend $6 billion, or an average of $1.5 billion per year. Page 157 of the fiscal plan shows capital spending growing $37 million from 25-26 to 26-27, and $155 million from 26-27 to 27-28. Through the chair, can the minister just please walk us through the detailed plan on how his government plans to spend the promised $8.6 billion, and why is the government delaying spending until after this current budget cycle?
Sure, yeah, happy to. I wouldn't characterize it as delay in spending. Of course, just as a quick overview in terms of our capital process, the individual projects have to proceed through 3 stages. The first stage, of course, being planning, the second stage being design, and then the third and final stage being construction. So, and this is a practice, this is a new practice that began in Budget 23 as a result of Auditor General recommendations and suggestions to improve transparency around school capital spending and financing. So given that the schools need to move through the various stages, obviously in the planning and design stage, the amount of funding that's required is much less than is required for a full construction. So the school projects need to move through that. So as we add in the 41 new projects that we are in Budget 25 here that we're announcing over the course of the next few days, as we add those in, those will enter our capital plan in either a planning or design phase. They typically need a smaller amount of money to conduct the work that's necessary for planning and design. And then once they move to construction, of course, that's when a larger portion of funding is required to help pay for construction costs. And obviously the construction cycle can take typically approximately 2 to 3 years once all the preliminary work is done. And so even within that 2 to 3 years of construction, costs are a little smaller at the beginning of the construction and ramp up. So we have factored that in, and that's why you see a larger spend in future years as more of these projects advance to construction phases and move to more detailed phases of construction, then more dollars are made available. That being said, one of the key elements that we have introduced in our aggressive school construction program is the notion and the concept that a project can move between those 3 stages at any time in the year. In the past 2 budget cycles, a project could only move forward from planning to design to construction annually in the budget cycle. But we recognize that we need to build schools as quickly as possible. So we've revised that process and we've worked with Treasury Board so that if a project is completed the requirements of the planning stage, then we can go to Treasury Board and we can tell them that this school division has ticked off all of the boxes on these 3 projects, all the planning work is complete, they're ready to go to design, and then Treasury Board will provide us with additional funding in year that we can distribute to the school boards so that they can conduct the necessary design work. Once the design work has been complete, we can go back to Treasury Board and say the design work is now complete. we are requesting construction funding for these projects so they can move ahead. So this new process will allow schools to be built much faster than has been the practice in the past.
So does the minister know when we can expect construction to begin on school construction? Can we call it SCAP?
Yeah, we can call it SCAP.
Does the minister know when we'll see construction begin on schools funded under SCAP?
Yeah, I believe, and I'll defer to Jeff to correct me if I'm wrong, but well, I guess it varies because we've made all of the school projects candidates for SCAP. So ones that were already in the capital plan, they can be accelerated. So we actually, many projects have moved forward. I was just, a few months back in Stony Plain to announce that, Spruce Grove, that the Spruce Grove Composite High School, which was currently in design, had completed all of the design work. And a few months ago, we were able to announce that we had unlocked the construction funding for it as part of SCAP. And it's now moving forward with construction. So construction funding is being provided now to that project and is beginning. So construction can begin on these projects as soon as they're ready, is the short answer, because as I mentioned, a lot of projects are already in the queue in our capital plan and can proceed already.
Okay, I'm gonna preamble this one a little bit. When the government announced an $8.6 billion spend, the School Construction Accelerator Program, I don't know, I think I expected to just see more acceleration in actual school construction. Now, I know you said you've got new projects coming, but what I see on the capital plan this year is fewer construction projects than the previous year. I have a note here about design projects because that's also lower now, but I think that will be increased with your 10 additional projects that are going to be announced. But the issue is that we have a real crisis happening in schools right now. So Edmonton Public Schools are at 90% capacity, Airdrie Public Schools 96% capacity, Cochrane 95%, Chestermere 98%, CBE 95%. Lethbridge West schools are at 130% capacity. I don't want to get started on high schools, but I have to mention it because North Trail High School, it opened in Calgary last year. It was immediately full. It was full before the end of the year. There were families who fought for that school for years, who live in the surrounding communities. They're already being overflowed kilometers away to one of a small handful of high schools left in Calgary that aren't at or over 100% capacity. High schools, the minister will know, are the most complex build, which means best case scenario, we won't see a new high school opening in Calgary until 2028. The UCP have underspent and underinvested in school capital for years to the point where they now have to create an accelerated funding model for projects that boards and communities have been asking for years. What is the rationale behind waiting so long to build schools to keep pace with need and population growth?
Yeah, it's thank you, a very important question, and indeed, we fully acknowledge and see and recognize the significant enrollment pressure that our school divisions are under. I think Calgary Board of Education went from an 85% utilization rate in one year to a 92% utilization rate the subsequent year. Edmonton Public Schools is reporting, I think it's the highest enrollment increase in 60 years. So these are not normal times when it comes to enrollment pressure. And a key reason that we're seeing this this sudden and significant enrollment increase is due to population growth. Of course, Alberta's population increased by 200,000 in 2023 alone, a similar number in 24, and we're now edging out just about 5 million people within the province. So we've seen a significant increase in our population over the past couple of years, as have other provinces. This isn't, I think Alberta's population increase has been disproportionately higher than other provinces, but many other provinces have also seen increases in population and are struggling with similar challenges. So we've seen this. we've recognized it, and most importantly, we've taken action to help address this. That's why the Premier announced an $8.6 billion investment in the spring to aggressively build these schools as quickly as possible. And the accelerated process is working and is working very well. I mentioned earlier that we were able to accelerate the Spruce Grove Composite High School replacement as an example. And we did that a couple of months ago. If we were in the previous cycle, that project would have only been able to receive construction funding now. But we were able to accelerate it, move it forward. It had met all the design requirements and is now receiving construction funding to begin that. And in total, we have actually advanced because of SCAP, 22 projects. 17 have been advanced into construction, 3 into design, and 2 have been added into planning. Some of the ones that have been accelerated include in Calgary. I just announced very recently a new high school in Cornerstone and 2 new elementary schools in Redstone have been accelerated to receive construction funding. Again, that was done about 2 months ago. If we didn't have the SCAP program, they would only be receiving construction funding right now as we discuss and debate the budget. Airdrie is receiving a new high school as an accelerated project. Chestermere is receiving a new K-9. Edmonton is receiving a new 7 to 9 in Pilot Sound, a new elementary in Glen Reading Heights, a new elementary in Rosenthal, Laurel, Rivers Edge, Okotoks, a new high school, many projects. These are all in the construction phase that have been expedited. So the expedited process is working very well, and I guess perhaps a quick pitch to our school boards and our municipalities, as I have been doing over the past few months. I like to think of it a little bit as a race, and perhaps using that as a metaphor. The starting gun has been fired, the gates have been opened, and the school projects are out of the gates. And whenever your project is ready, whenever you've met the design requirements, the planning requirements, let us know, and those projects can move to the next stage and receive construction funding. So we're ready to proceed as quickly as they are.
So you talked about the acceleration is the fact that the projects can move from one stage to the next without waiting for the next year's fiscal plan. So do you have an idea of what amount of time that we're talking about saving here? Like, you're going to build a school in 3 years instead of 5 years? Are you going to build a school in 4 years and 6 months instead of 5 years? Do you have an idea of what the pace of acceleration is going to look like?
Yeah, of course it'll vary on individual projects, but our estimate is that the project can be accelerated anywhere between 6 to 9 months, generally speaking.
And I went through a lot of those capacity issues. I do understand that population growth happened quite quickly. Although certainly this was a government that was, engaging in advertising campaigns to ask people to come to Alberta. So I do wonder why we weren't planning a little bit more in advance on that population growth. But the fact remains that we have school boards who are either over capacity and I mean, the minister knows this too, these capacity numbers, when we start talking about 95%, 98%, it might not be 100%, but we're already losing programming space in a school. 85% is considered, the optimum utilization that will still allow a school to have a before-after care program, a library, a maker space, like a lot of types of areas that, we would consider to be important in schools. So when we're at these capacity rates, the school is really overfull at this point. So can the minister tell us what's being done to support the communities who needed these schools 4 years ago? Because they're still going to be waiting, right? 2, 3, 4 years for construction, depending on, as you say, the type of school project.
Yeah, well, again, to those communities, I would say that we're working as quickly as we can. Obviously, it does take a few years to get a school built, but we've changed our process so that projects can be built faster, so that schools can be built faster. and we're responding as quickly as possible to get those schools under construction. In addition, of course, a school is a more permanent solution, but we recognize that that can take a few years. And we have also provided investment to more immediate and short-term solutions. We've made some significant increases in funding to our modular classroom program and increased funding in this budget so that we can purchase and install more modular classrooms. Of course, modulars aren't the permanent solution, but they can be an effective immediate remedy. They can be built and dispatched very quickly in just a matter of months. And we have, as I mentioned, increased the budget that we have available so that we can purchase more modulars, dispatch them. They are temporary interim solutions, but they can help alleviate some pressure very, very quickly until the school projects can be completed. I do want to note, you know, that just provide some overview of the general landscape, I guess, of our enrollment, and just provide you with our enrollment summary over the past few years. You know, we've seen a significant increase, and this has definitely been an unexpected increase. In 2021, the Calgary Board of Education was working with the Ministry of Education and actually looking at school closures. And in fact, in 2021, 2022, the top priority projects for the Calgary Board of Education, as an example, were modernization projects, not new school construction, but actually a lot of modernization projects. And in 2020, coming out of COVID, we actually had enrollment decline. In fact, in the 21-22 school year, we saw a 1.3% decline overall in our head count. So we came out of, you know, during this COVID period, and then coming out of COVID, a period of stagnation, even enrollment decline, to a period of historic growth. So I'm not sure how, you know, you can foresee that and you can really experience that or be prepared for that. As I mentioned, the population increase that we saw was also seen by other provinces. The large, as I mentioned, in 23 and 24, our population increased by about 200,000 each year, and the significant element of that population increase was international arrivals and immigration. And we've seen that in other provinces as well. And of course, the provincial government doesn't control immigration, but we saw significant increases with immigration levels, as did other provinces. And we're working as quickly as we can to build schools and other infrastructure to accommodate the significant increase in population growth.
Thanks, Minister. Just staying on capital, on page 106 of the fiscal plan, there's a discrepancy between the budgeted and forecasted amounts for capital spending on previously announced school projects. So you missed your target and only spent 75% of what you should have. So you underspent by $157 million in promised dollars to build new schools. Can the minister please explain why you weren't able to spend the money promised on building new schools, and what impact will this underspend have on timelines for schools to open?
Yeah, I'll get a detailed answer for you. You're looking at the budget versus forecast for 24-25?
Yes.
Was
yes.
722 versus 658?
592 verse 435 on the previously announced school projects.
Oh, I see where you are. Okay.
Line. Does that make sense? I think my math, so that was the underspend of 157.
Okay. That's this.
It's infrastructure stuff. Just how they
I'll defer you to Jeff. He's got a way better answer than I would give you.
Okay.
Sure, thank you for the question. So the differential between budget and forecast, this is the progression of work that's done on the active schools. So infrastructure is the ministry that's looking after the delivery of school capital projects. So as they progress throughout the year, and as you can imagine, the readiness of projects as they enter into the different phases, there's different amounts of dollars that may be expended based on the readiness of the project and how it's been tendered, etc. So all this is this the spend is just now matching the actual work that's been done. So the budget was expecting to spend $592 million, and in essence, at the end of the year, it ended up being 435. So the projects are still all active, but the spend and the completion of work was less than the projected budget at the beginning of the year. So it relates to in-flight projects.
So does that means that we would see an additional 157 million spent in the, because you're saying, so the projects are still the same,
Yes.
so the budget amount, you're gonna spend that money?
Yes.
You just couldn't walk it out the door this year,
Correct.
so it'll walk out the door next year.
Yeah, over the next, so then they will recash flow how the dollars are required to match the expenditure of the work that's done on those projects, of which there was 91 in-flight projects last year. Yep.
Thank you. So when SCAP funding was initially announced, there was an indication that this government planned to fund capital projects for private schools. This would be a new thing in Alberta and in the country. There are no examples in Canada of public money being used to build private schools. And public money for infrastructure that isn't accessible to the public is somewhat unprecedented. I'm not seeing any line items here on private school construction. So why are there no line items for private school construction? Do we know how much school construction funding is going to be used for private schools?
Yeah, so we're still working on developing the details of how we might work and partner with our independent nonprofit partners to help them expand spaces. We know that in Calgary, Edmonton, and in other areas, many of our independent nonprofit providers have significant wait lists, and many of them, of course, are working to provide specialized programming to students with unique needs, with learning disabilities, or other complex needs. And if we can work with them to expand spaces and help individual students receive the best possible individualized support, we're interested in looking at partnering with those independent schools and expanding spaces. So we're still working on finalizing details as to how we might work with them and what that might look like.
Okay. Yeah, wait lists, I can imagine. I think lots of parents would like to get their kids into a program with controlled class sizes, which we can't offer in our public schools. Are there any funding metrics in place to ensure private schools are not supported to the detriment of the public system? And do you have a timeline for when you think you're going to announce your program for private school capital funding?
Yeah, I don't have a final date as of yet. I would say just generally, within the next couple of months, give or take, we should have some more details ready and be in a position to announce more details of that. So we're still working on ironing out the details as to how that program can work.
Chair, we're allowed to share our time in this first block, right, between members?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
But I will, who's going to speak next?
I'm a member for Beverly Clareview.
And would you prefer blocked or shared time?
Shared would be lovely.
And Minister?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect, thank you so much. So through you, Chair, and to the Minister, I'm going to switch the subject up a little bit, and I'm certain that you won't be surprised to that idea of workforce planning and strategy, given all of those employment pressures. And so my first comments are specifically directed to pages 92 and 154, the fiscal plan, of course, dealing with public sector compensation. When one does a little bit of research with the Alberta Learning Information Service, we learned that educational support workers, specifically educational assistants, in terms of the job market for them, has changed from sort of warmish to coldish, which of course means that there are too many positions open and not enough folks interested in those positions. And I think that when we combine that with the knowledge that there are many education support workers presently on strike, that tells a narrative that that we absolutely need to be dealing with. And when you add the complexity that our classrooms are experiencing at the moment, when you know that many of our school divisions, like Edmonton Public, are looking at unfunded positions of about 1,000 or so, when you understand that bargaining isn't perhaps the most fair in my view at the moment, given wage caps. And again, I know this is a preamble, and last year I got caught in the preamble, so I'm going to try not to preamble quite so much. When you also consider that page 92 of the fiscal plan talks about that compensation, which doesn't, of course, really account for inflationary pressures given the last decade of about 30% inflation. I'm wondering how the government is going to demonstrate to those folks currently on strike, and as well those who are still working in the different divisions within the province, that the positions they hold are indeed valued. I'm wondering if there, and I understand that there's a contingency of about $4 billion that was noted in the fiscal plan, page 11, that does talk about wage pressures and compensation pressures. So my very first question is, I'm wondering if part of those contingency dollars, part of the planning for those contingency dollars, will be going to offset some of those inflationary pressures for wages for both striking and non-striking workers.
Sure. I'd hate to start chatting about Minister Horner's budget and the pieces that are contained with his estimates and what he's planning to use them for. So be happy to refer you to Minister Horner and Finance Committee for more detailed explanation about his contingency line items. As it relates, Joe, generally to education staff, teachers and educational assistants, there's no question that our staff are incredibly valued, and there's no question that our staff, our teachers, educational assistants, and others do tremendous work, and I commend them every single day for the amazing work that they do in helping to provide a world-class education. Of course, they're at the front of that and bear the lion's share of the accolades when we do see incredibly strong PISA results and things of that nature. I think we would all agree that it is our teachers, educational assistants, and other staff who bear the lion's share of the accolades and deserve the accolades the most for the attainment of those results. And just to provide some context, out of the $9 billion that we're spending in Budget 25 for education, about $5 billion goes to teacher salaries and benefits, and another $2 billion is spent on support staff salaries and benefits. So the lion's share of our spend goes to support our staff, goes to support our teachers, our educational assistants, and with the $1.1 billion that we will be increasing our spend over the next 3 years, we estimate that we'll be able to hire 4,000 more teachers and other staff so that we can ensure that these classrooms, that these schools that we're building are adequately staffed, and students have the staff that they need.
Thank you, Minister. And kind of piggybacking off of what you've talked about here, we know, of course, that classroom complexity has been getting increasingly complex over the last number of years, particularly as we've moved to a much more included system rather than segregated system. And so speaking to page 44 of the business plan and outcome 4, as well as key objective 4.5, unfortunately, of course, and speaking from very personal experience, classroom conditions are indeed on the decline as class sizes continue to rise. We know that parents continue to talk about their own student needs going unmet. And we also know, as I alluded to previously, that teachers and support worker positions are at times going unfilled, which of course has added to the sort of basic demoralization of all of those folks working in education at the moment. We know as well that Alberta's kids are caught in a chronic underfunding maelstrom, and despite that, we also understand that because of that chronic underfunding, we have not yet made ourselves into that sort of top tier funding for the entire country. We know that we are certainly not there. We're far, far below that. And given as well that you've also stated the need to build schools as quickly as possible, but we also need staff to run those schools. And when I consider my very last position, we were funding staff over 90% in our school at that point. And that particular school I know is running at 100% capacity. So I can imagine what their budget is looking like this year. So what I'm really wondering at this point then is, given all of that context, what exactly are the specific details in terms of real, both qualitative and quantitative investments that are going to be made to improve the working conditions of teachers and school support workers, which of course will then go a long way to improve the learning conditions of our kids in our schools. So I'm looking for a detailed way for planning to create a plan to create the conditions as well for recruitment and retention, because we know those positions are going on unfilled. Would this include everything from, individual classroom supports, things like iPads? It's a very, very specific thing, but particularly for kids with lots of complexities. Those are the things that they need. Working with what was, of course, AHS to fund more positions for people like speech-language pathologists and occupational therapists. And if indeed that is case, if that indeed is the case, Chair, what are the plans for working with other ministries like advanced education to ensure that there are seats in our educational institutions? Are we thinking about, Chair, a return to the regional collaborative service delivery model, which was very successful? And then further, what's the plan for consultation?
Okay, lots there.
Yes.
Oof. Okay, stop me at any time. So a number of pieces there, so I'll try and address all of them, and apologies if I miss anything. But certainly addressing the classroom complexity challenges and issues is a top priority, and we know that this is a source of contention for teachers and educational assistants. I've heard it firsthand. And lots of discussions with our school boards and the Alberta Teachers Association and others about how we navigate and deal with complexity, and how we navigate and deal with inclusion into the classroom, and how we support students in the best possible way. I know our policy on inclusion is, I think, about 20 years old, and I know other provinces have recently been looking at different approaches or updates to their policies. I think we might need to do the same. But apart from a policy discussion, we also need to take real, tangible, immediate steps to help address some of these challenges that we're seeing in the classroom. So we recognize that, and there's a number of things that we're doing. So first and foremost, we've implemented the literacy and numeracy screening mandatory from kindergarten to grade 3. And the reason that we've done that is twofold. Number one, because we know with confidence, as research conducted right here in Alberta with researchers right here in Alberta can show us, that these screeners can predict with 95% accuracy if a student is going to have learning disabilities or challenges in the future. So if we can find out that information as early as kindergarten or grade 1, that allows our school boards to then implement the earliest possible intervention to prevent those children from needing additional support in future years. So that's part of the strategies. Let's identify students that may have learning challenges or may experience learning difficulties as early as possible, give them the intervention support that they need to prevent downstream continued challenges or complexity. That's part of the reason why, to help facilitate this strategy, is part of the reason why in this budget we are also providing targeted funding for literacy and numeracy intervention. Because yes, it's important to conduct the screeners and the assessments, but we also need to make sure that there's targeted funding provided to our school boards so that they can hire additional support staff to help conduct the intervention that's required and necessary. And the reports that are received as a consequence of the intervention is incredible. I'm not sure if you've seen the reports that are produced, but they're really incredible and detailed and show, a student's phonological awareness, their ability, and really breaks it down on an individual level and compares the student against the mean, so that students have really detailed information about how to support that student. So that's kind of pillar number one. Let's do the early intervention. Let's do the work early and get that support to students. The second thing that we're doing in this budget is increasing by a significant amount the funding that we provide in the Classroom Complexity Grant. And just for context, the Classroom Complexity Grant was first created in Budget 23. And the purpose of the grant is to provide targeted funding to school boards so that they can hire psychologists, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, or other professionals that the school board deems necessary and appropriate to support the complex learning needs of their school division. In this budget, we are increasing that grant by 20%. So in this year, we will be spending $55 million to our school boards to support the Classroom Complexity Grant and to help them hire those professionals that I mentioned. We are also providing additional funding, $65 million over the next 3 years to support mental health related initiatives and to support mental health services and support focusing on prevention, early identification, or well-being. We're also providing $5 million in this budget to diagnose and provide assessments for autism and other complex needs. And in addition, we are also increasing our grant rates, primarily PUF rates, which of course program unit funding, which, as I'm sure you're aware, the PUF program that helps to provide support for students with moderate language delays and other challenges in their early formative years. So there's more, of course, that, you know, there's not just one answer to addressing the complexity issues and challenges. We do need to look at policy, as I've mentioned, but we do need to take direct measures to help school boards hire additional staff and resources. So we are trying to address this in a multi-pronged approach. I have talked, with the Alberta Teachers Association about violence in the classroom. I've talked with groups, ADHD Alberta and other organizations, and when I was talking recently with the Alberta Teachers Association, we had a conversation about violence in the classroom, and through their survey, they were of their members, they identified that a significant portion of their members, teachers, of course, felt that they didn't have the necessary skills and competencies to be able to handle these challenges. And so I'm interested in looking a little bit more at professional development and how can we support teachers in professional development, or how can we better support individuals in our BEd programs currently to make sure that they have the skills and competencies that they need to ensure that they'll be successful, to ensure that they're ready to tackle the real world conditions. So I want to talk more with the deans of education and others to ensure that we're providing BEd students and teachers with the right level of training and support that they need to be able to handle these dynamics.
Thank you. Through the chair and to you again, Minister, I would also suggest that it's, given what you just said, one of the most important things we can do to address that level of complexity and teachers' concerns, of course, is to get our support workers back into the classroom. And speaking of PUF, program unit funding, I just happen to have a question about that. We're dealing with outcomes 1, 2, 3, and 4, pages 41 through 45 of the department's business plan, and expenses noted under ECS to grade 12 instruction on page 46, also with the business plan. So, and as you alluded to, I did indeed have a few years' experience dealing with program unit funding as an assistant principal. I was there in 2022 when the weighting moving average was introduced, when PUF was cut, when the base funding was reduced for many types of disability codes, which meant, of course, that also public schools could no longer offer a third year of funding for those early childhood programs, although private operators could. At the same time, there were changes made to Alberta Health Services, which meant that families could no longer, count on AHS to provide them with assessments, and that included speech and language assessments. And those assessments, of course, provided parents and guardians with a look into whatever their own individual child's complexity and challenges might have been, and also provided a basis for individualized programming, should they be able to access early childhood programming. Which of course put an incredible burden on parents. We know how much those assessments cost, and to not have them available through AHS made a real difference to parents in Alberta. And my, of course, own personal experience with Edmonton Public as one of the boards that was offering programming at the time meant that we closed many of those early childhood programs. We went something like 10 hubs down to just a couple in the city. which, as you've noted, made an incredible difference because it meant that there were so many gaps in the programming available to kids, so many kids who could no longer qualify for that funding. So certainly the impact of those cuts, Chair, and changes cannot be overstated. There's been a drastic reduction in the number of kids who've been able to access the programming. Programming hours are reduced, programming funding levels are reduced. Placements are hard to come by. Specialists are unavailable because perhaps they're now in private practice, since they're certainly not working through AHS. And in the annual report for education, it states that the PUF grant was reviewed to identify gaps, and I appreciate that you've added more dollars into it. However, at the same time, that isn't a full restoration of PUF. So I'm wondering then what the plan is to fully restore the number of hours for PUF, and for once again to include a third year for public school division students who might be entering kindergarten. What's the plan for reviewing the criteria? Because the criteria was also changed. That idea of going from the 5th percentile to the 3rd percentile, for instance, in some of the coding criteria, which of course meant that kids were denied, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing that level of complexity in kindergarten.
Yeah, thank you. A very important question, and I may defer to Kindy to talk a little bit more about some of the engagement work that we've done. But I believe it was maybe back in Budget 24, actually, we undertook some targeted conversation and consultation with our stakeholders and other partners. And this was a priority. It was actually reflected directly in my mandate letter from the Premier to specifically review the PUF program and explore how it can be further strengthened. So right away in 23, we began some of that work and had some extensive consultation with our stakeholders and other partners. That led to some changes in Budget 24, where we did provide some increased funding in Budget 24, and we're able to provide more support to PUF in this budget as well, which is a priority for us. As I mentioned, PUF rates will be increasing by 2.32% in the current budget. Furthermore, $10 million is available in this budget to support 2 enrollment count dates, September and February. So, of course, having the 2 intakes is important so that we can ensure that students who are identified and need that early intervention are able to do it at those different intervals throughout the year, because getting that early intervention is critical and needs to happen as quickly as possible. And this of course will ensure that access to programming is available to children with severe disabilities or other delays. We are, in addition to the PUF grant, we're also increasing the Specialized Learning Support Grant, the SLS grant, by 2.32%, the Moderate Language Delay, and several other grants that broadly help support students with complex needs, including English as an additional language or refugee grant as well. So we are committed to continuing to review and improving funding operation of the PUF program. That, coupled with the work that we're doing in literacy and numeracy screening for students starting in kindergarten all the way into grade 3, demonstrates that it is a priority for this government to ensure that we provide the strongest possible supports for our early learners so that they can have the strongest possible start. And again, as I mentioned, there are cascading implications of that with respect to complexity in the classroom. If challenges with respect to learning delays or other issues can be addressed early, then of course we can minimize delays, or we can minimize complexity and other challenges in future years. So our general approach is to conduct that intervention and provide those supports as early as possible. That's why we're continuing to review and increase funding to PUF.
So then one can assume then that you will also be looking at the criteria that's involved, and that you'll also be looking at that sort of half-day versus day-long funding as well.
Yeah, we did consult on that back in 23, and we've had some opportunities to have some conversation about that, and of course made decisions in Budget 24 and in Budget 25. I'm always happy to continue to have conversations with our partners about PUF and see how how it can be further strengthened. So always happy to have that conversation because those youngest learners need the right support.
Yes, they do.
And that's our time with the official opposition. We'll now move over to the government side of the table here. And then after you're done your segment, then we'll have our short break. So would you like to combine or share?
Sure, please.
And Minister, what's your preference, combined or shared time?
You have the government member question.
I'm happy to share time.
All right, please proceed.
All right. First, thank you through the chair to the minister and to all of your staff that are here today for all the great work you're doing. It's really exciting to hear, I think especially the accelerated program, and that this is being a real strong priority within this government, so thank you for that. Concerning collegiate schools, I've read a relatively new and only in Alberta school model that advances choice in education called collegiate schools. I note in key objective 3.1 on page number 43 of the business plan, it asks the ministry to enhance the availability and sustainability of career education programming opportunities that enable students to explore and experience various occupations throughout grades 7 to 12. So I'm interested in learning a bit more about what collegiate schools mean for our education system and how they help to provide Alberta students with a world-class education. Through the chair, could the minister describe what a collegiate school is and what unique programming it can offer?
Yeah, thank you so much. An important question. I'm really excited about the prospects surrounding collegiate schools. I think there's a lot of potential and opportunity for them to expand, but of course, more importantly, the opportunities that they provide to students are incredible. Perhaps just as a quick overview to answer your question there around what exactly they are and what kind of programming they offer. I guess the best way to describe them is they are specialized schools, so they do have specialized programming that's a little bit more unique than you might find in another school. And they have customized programming related to particular subjects or career fields. And the most important thing is that they help to provide clear pathways for students interested in exploring a particular career or post-secondary journey. So it gives them clarity, it gives them more high school programming that is related to, let's say they want to pursue a future career in medicine, as an example. A collegiate school would have programming that more closely connects in with medical programming. They may have dual credit opportunities whereby students, of course, can earn credits for high school completion and then for post-secondary. And they typically exist with a post-secondary partnership so that there is, again, a clear pathway of where that student is going. They have a sense of what program they're going to be applying for at a post-secondary institution or a career that they're going to be moving into. So really helps students who have some clarity about where they want to go and what they want to do get there a lot faster.
Through the chair, thank you to the minister for that answer. Now, how does Budget 2025 support this unique programming across Alberta's education system? And is Alberta Education supporting this programming in other ways?
Yeah, there's a number of ways in which we're supporting collegiate schools and collegiate programs. Overall, in our budget, we have just over $100 million allocated over the next 3 years, specifically to support career-oriented programming quite generally. And of course, that some of that can be used for collegiate schools, but at a high level, we do want to ensure that more students have an opportunity to explore career development opportunities and options, and that's where the $102 million will be directed to our school boards to use to enhance career education generally. But as it relates to collegiates specifically, we have $22 million over the next 3 years going over to startup funding. Of course, as I think one can understand, there's some immediate costs associated with a startup of a new collegiate program or school. And additionally, there will be $43 million to support capital costs of new collegiate schools in 25 and 26. There's also $6 million, $8 million, and $8 million over the 3 years to provide startup funding. That's the 22 million that I mentioned, just broken down over the 3-year period. And just to give you a sense of where we're at, for the current application cycle for collegiate, we received 22 applications by the January 31st, 25 deadline. And any approved school, which we'll hope to be in a position to announce those approved schools shortly, those approved schools will be provided with startup funding to help them get off the ground. So definitely a priority and something that, again, is a really exciting and interesting model as these schools partner, of course, with school boards and are hosted by school boards, but also partner with post-secondary partners and industry partners. They can be very effective in helping students who know what they want to do, know where they want to go, get there a lot faster.
Well, through the chair again, thank you to the minister for that answer. And finally, could the minister provide some examples of these schools and what programming they're providing to students that they wouldn't be able to access otherwise? So maybe where are they in the province and what do they look like?
Yeah, I have a lot of examples here, so I won't ad lib. I'll just go through some of these examples because they're really quite exciting. They're really quite unique. There's the actually one that I'm quite familiar with. It's the South Alberta Flight Academy, which is a really interesting program. It's hosted with the Prairie Rose School Division. So it's a high school program that allows students to earn their private pilot's license along with their high school diploma. And it's a partnership that's done with Prairie Rose Public, Eagle Butte High School, and Super T Aviation. And the operations run out of the high school in Dunmore and the Medicine Hat Airport. So it's really unique that they get that opportunity to get their pilot's license, because obviously these are students who have some sense of where they want to go. They want to probably go into the aviation world or industry, and they're able to get their private pilot's license while they're doing their high school diploma. So it's helping them move forward. Fort Vermilion School Division has the Building Future Collegiate, which in this program, students have the opportunity to obtain college credits and other credentials before they even leave high school, giving them a head start on getting to where they want to go. Also connects them to local employers for them to begin their careers in their home community. There are a total of 12 operating collegiate schools right now, and they offer 30 pathways collectively into post-secondary in areas such as ag and ag tech, aircraft maintenance, class 1 driver training, commercial pilot status, fabrication, film, media, entertainment, arts, graphic design, healthcare, hospitality, skilled trades, and more. So these are exciting areas where students can get a head start.
Great. Again, thank you through the chair to the minister for that. I'll move on to Indigenous education. There are 48 First Nations and 8 Métis settlements in Alberta. In 24-25, there were approximately 62,600 self-identified First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students attending provincial schools. On page number 42 of the business plan, Outcome 2 outlines that the ministry should ensure First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students in Alberta are successful. I'm interested in understanding how the ministry supports these students. So could the minister explain what supports are provided in budget 25-26 to support First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students in achieving success?
Yeah, thank you. A very important question and a top priority for the ministry. I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we're doing in Budget 25 to help support First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students. First and foremost, I have to talk about the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit grant, which is, of course, a specialized and targeted grant that is provided to school boards to help them provide program and instructional supports to First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students, and that can be used to help support the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations. So in Budget 25, 95 million is going into that grant to support those objectives. We also have the other targeted grants that have a more, within the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit grant, there's a lot of flexibility built into that and built into how a school division can use those funds. But we also at the same time have a few much more targeted grants to achieve very specific outcomes and objectives, such as the Bridging Classrooms to Communities grant. So that's another one that goes to support First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students and communities, but that's much more of a targeted objective. The objective of that grant is to help support Indigenous communities and school boards partner together and build relationships together to break down some of those barriers and build more productive and collaborative relationships to support student success and advance reconciliation. So there's a 3-year, $10.5 million investment. That was first announced actually back in July of 23, but is continuing because it was a 3-year investment, is continuing in this budget, but of course a much more targeted grant. In addition, we're also providing support through enhancing funding, but not replacing, but enhancing funding for on-reserve education. Of course, that is primarily a federal responsibility, but there are opportunities for the government of Alberta to assist. For example, we do provide funding through framework agreements with a couple of school authorities, First Nation school authorities such as the Musqueam Education School Commission, and others to support improved programming, develop local programming, a lot typically around language development and support, and other teacher professional development. So these are some of the objectives that are underway and that we support.
Thank you, through the chair, to the minister for that. Performance Measure 2.8 looks at high school completion rates. How will the support measures in Budget 25-26 contribute to an increase in high school completion rate for self-identified First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, outcomes are important, and we want to make sure that we are improving some of those metrics and we are improving completion rates and graduation rates. We are seeing some promising improvements in this area, specifically in high school completion rates, attributed to many of the significant investments that we're making to help support First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students. Completion rates for self-identified students has improved by 4.4% from 2018-19 to 22-23. So we are starting to see those rates increase, which is remarkable and encouraging. And we're also seeing other developments. Working with other partners and creating those collaborative relationships is really critical to helping students improve. Partners like St. Paul Education Regional Division and others are really invested in advancing and supporting Indigenous student outcomes. Just as an example, St. Paul Education offers Indigenous specific Cree language and cultural programming and outdoor education land-based learning programming. And as a result of many of these efforts, we are seeing, again, more improved student outcomes. The number of students completing high school within 5 years of entering grade 10 significantly increased by more than 5% between 22 and 23. And the number of students achieving standard of excellence on diploma exams increased by 2% from 22 to 23. We're also working with and taking additional efforts through alternative school programs and working with other surrounding First Nations communities around Calgary, Edmonton, and other communities to find ways that we can partner and work together to improve outcomes. So we are seeing some, in summary, we are seeing some signs of success, and we're going to, of course, continue our efforts there.
Oh, that's good news. It's good to hear that. And thank you for that answer again through the chair to the minister. I can see the information lags a year regarding Performance Measure 2B, which involves the high school to post-secondary transition. How will measures in the 25-26 budget help and translate to an increase in post-secondary education rates among self-identified First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Of course, high school transition to post-secondary is critically important, and we do have some analysis of those rates. Again, similarly, we are seeing some increases in those areas amongst Indigenous students. The 6-year high school to post-secondary transition rate for self-identified First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students has increased over a 5-year period that we've measured from 35% in 2019 to just shy of 37% in 22-23. So again, starting to see it edge up slightly, but moving in the right direction. And we do provide a number of different supports to help with that transition. You know, that transition can be significant and challenging. So we do help support several initiatives that are oriented towards those transitions. One of them, of course, relates to dual credit funding, and we are providing increased investment to support more dual credit programming. And research has shown that students that have the opportunity to participate in dual credit programming and earn dual credit options are way more likely to make the transition to post-secondary than if they hadn't participated in a dual credit program. Obviously, you know, part of the rationale there is if you finish high school and you've already got some credits, some post-secondary credits under your belt, you can be much more inclined to give yourself that extra push and say, you know what, I already have some credits, and give yourself that extra motivation to attend. And again, there's some research that points to this and that demonstrates the success rate of students that do participate in dual credit programming versus those who don't. So that's an important initiative that we work with, and more specifically, apart from dual credit programming that exists within our education system writ large, we do also provide dual credit funding to 3 First Nation education authorities. In particular, there's about $350,000 that's currently being provided to those 3 First Nation Education Authority, and we're also working with our post-secondary institutions such as MacEwan University to identify ways in which we can address barriers for post-secondary, for Indigenous students and help them with their post-secondary transition. So, a number of different things that are underway.
Great, again, good news. Thank you for that answer again. One last question, and it has to do with revenue outlook. And I see that on page 51 of the fiscal plan, total revenue in 2025-26 is forecast at $75.1 billion, which the fiscal plan notes is a decrease of $6.6 billion from the 24-25 third quarter forecast of $80.7 billion. Despite this decline, I note that the total for education system support has increased from the previous year, per line item 2 on page 69 of the 2025-26 government estimates, general revenue fund document. What does this increase mean for your department?
Sure. Well, of course, to better support our schools and our students, we are taking steps, as we've mentioned this morning, to address growing enrollment, and such as increasing grant rates and putting more money into the classroom as best we can. We are also moving to the more historical percentage support for education expense between property tax and general revenue. So typically in the past, property tax has covered 1/3 of education spend, and general revenue has covered the remaining 2/3. So in the 25 budget, education property taxes will fund 31.6% of our operating costs, which includes teacher salaries, textbooks, classroom resources, and all of the other associated costs of providing education. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I think the question was asked earlier, but education property taxes are not used in any way, shape, or form to fund government operations. Capital costs, school construction, renovation, or teachers' pensions, they are used for operating dollars, salaries, wages, benefits, textbooks, other classroom supports and resources. So, and it's actually, you know, directed through provincial law. That money collected through education property tax can only be used to fund the public education system, which includes public separate school authorities. So other organizations such as independent schools, early childhood service, charter schools, francophone authorities are not eligible for funding under the Alberta School Foundation Fund. So these dollars that are raised go directly to our public and separate school authorities.
Again, thank you for that answer through the chair. And my final question, as a follow-up to this, is what does the minister think this investment means for the overall government's perspective when it comes to the importance of education for Alberta?
Yeah, I think this, demonstrates, of course, how significant and important our education system is, and that's one of the reasons why we're making such a significant investment. We firmly believe in continuing to provide a world-class education to our children, and giving them the tools that they need to succeed, and this budget will help us accomplish that. The revenue will go straight into the classroom and straight to support the delivery of educational services, and will not be used in other manners or for other initiatives of government, but directly to support educational services and costs. And again, the other key thing that I would highlight, what for me Budget 25 really symbolizes and demonstrates with respect to our education system, is that our government has listened very carefully to our partners, has heard their concerns, and most importantly is taking action to address the concerns that we've heard when it comes to education.
Thank you so much, Minister. We'll have our 5-minute break now. Thanks, everyone. are you going ahead with the questions?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so I think most everyone's back to their seat now, so we will move back over to the official opposition. And would you care to share or?
I would like to.
Minister, what's your preference? Share?
Yeah, I'm happy to share.
Let's proceed.
Okay, and thank you, and through you, the chair, my first question is references page 44 of the business plan. And on page 44 of the business plan has the Ministry of Education planning for a $3.3 billion capital investment over the next 3 years, which is very ambitious and I think needed as well. But, you know, considering the growing scope of the corrupt care scandal, including the recent resignation of the Minister of Infrastructure, who said he could not, quote, stand by many questionable procurement decisions made by this government. I was quite shocked to see that. So considering the $3.3 billion education plan is some of the very largest procurements in this current budget for the whole budget, I think Albertans need to know that each of these procurements for these capital projects have been executed with due process, and each step in the process will be revealed through documents provided by the Ministry of Education for public scrutiny in conjunction with the Minister of Infrastructure. So I'm asking, first of all, if due process was followed in this procurement, and that, number two, can the ministry, together with the Infrastructure Ministry, provide the documents that would validate a due process for this $3.3 billion plan?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Obviously, it's critically important. I would have to defer you though to the Ministry of Infrastructure. Of course, they are the lead ministry when it comes to procurement. They are the lead ministry when it comes to the facilitation of the construction of the school projects. Once we, in the Ministry of Education, have finalized the identification of the priority projects and received approval to proceed with whatever projects we've identified, the projects are then subsequently the responsibility of the Ministry of Infrastructure to take next steps. But what I can talk about are just generally, if I can, to answer some of your colleagues' previous questions regarding the number of projects and where those are at. So there are, in Budget 25, as I was mentioning, we will be moving ahead with 41 projects. 18 will, and you're scooping my announcement on Friday, but that's okay. But 18 of the 41 will be in Calgary Metro. 14 of the 41 will be in Edmonton Metro. And then we've already announced the 9 additional projects that will be in North Region, Central, and South. Those have already been announced.
Thank you, I appreciate that. You're very welcome. I mean, I'm aware of the process, having built quite a number of schools as well when I was minister. But 243, yeah, exactly. So, but there's two things going on here, and I'm sure that you do understand it. Number one, that these are schools that are identified by the Ministry of Education. And so, you know, in the court of public opinion, you are responsible for those schools. And the procurement now being coming into question, right, with the Minister of Education saying that there's a number of questionable procurement decisions being made by this government, I think it's incumbent upon yourself as minister and your ministry to expedite the documentation that will show that these procurements and these choices for schools are done with completely above the board. You know, there's another issue that is closely tied to this, and that is the choice of whether to build a school through conventional means or by using the P3, public-private partnership model, which is proven to be very problematic. And again, it clouds the issue around procurement because, of course, you're getting a private company to build and to, and own and maintain those schools, right? And so, I'm free advice. Whether you are passing that over to the Ministry of Infrastructure or, for those decisions in the court of public opinion, and indeed, it's all part of the government of Alberta making these decisions. You need to come clean about how those contracts are dispersed and who gets the contract to build these schools, and is it done in a clean and transparent way. Question mark.
Yeah, sorry, I may just ask Jeff to supplement a little bit, but as I mentioned earlier, the procurement process as it relates to the new schools and any school construction process is handled by the Ministry of Infrastructure, and they handle that entire process. I could say, though, that all projects, of course, are done in complete alignment with trade agreements, and all schools are built by public companies. And again, the Ministry of Infrastructure can answer more specific questions related to their procurement process. But we, within the Ministry of Education, work very diligently to be in full compliance with Auditor General and other transparency requirements. As I mentioned earlier, in Budget 23, we changed our process related to school construction to provide more transparency, introducing the 3 stages of planning, design, and construction. And this was directly because of Auditor General recommendations, just to help provide more clarity and transparency to the process. Because in the past, sometimes government would announce, we're going to build a school here, and there would be an announcement about it, and then maybe 2-3 years later, nothing had happened yet, or dollars hadn't flowed out yet. And so again, the Auditor General made some recommendations and said, let's have these 3 stages so that it's a lot more clear about where funding is going and what stage a project is at and how it's moving forward. But if you have additional questions related to procurement process, I think that's best handled by the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Yes, certainly we will ask that minister, and he's just a new minister, a week old, and so you can give him the heads up that we will be doing that. That'll be great. I have 2. I'm just trying to watch the clock very carefully here. Question 1: are you doing a comparative analysis between conventional school builds and P3s? I know that there's a demonstrably higher cost during the lifetime of a P3 school, public-private partnership, and are you aware of that higher cost? And and then why would you choose to build a P3 considering that the public-private partnership over the lifetime of that school actually costs more? You can't just defer the price of a school, the cost of a school over a longer period of time and say that you're saving money, because in fact, that's just not the case. And my second question, just in case we run out of time, is that is the Ministry of Education employing or contracting to the Rubicon Group in any way, shape, or form for consultancy? Rubicon being a consultants company that does do government contracts. Are you using Rubicon, or have you, or will you be using Rubicon Consulting as part of your operations as Ministry of Education?
Sure. To the latter point, I think it was Rubicon. I think
yes, correct.
No, I'm not familiar of any contract or involvement with Rubicon as it relates to the Ministry of Education. So I'm not aware of anything related to that. And with respect to your first question, and I'll give you some time back, maybe if you can squeeze in another question in a minute. But yeah, with respect to your first question, again, I'd have to defer you to the Ministry of Infrastructure. I believe they conduct some analysis as it relates to the value of dollars and the value and cost effectiveness of P3 model and P3 contracts. But again, the Ministry of Infrastructure being the primary responsible and lead ministry as it relates to P3 and procurement, I think that they would have some more detailed answers for you.
Okay, and just finally, when determining how much money is being spent in the Ministry of Education, the minister likes to talk about how they're spending in a record amount, but if you factor in population growth and inflation, right, the simple formula of that is that there's an increase of 5.1% in Alberta generally and in the ministry specifically. So that is, in fact, your budget is a reduction.
Thank you, member. We'll move back over to the government side.
Thank you. And thank you, Department of Education, for being here, and the Minister, of course, for your work. I would like to look at page number 22 of the strategic plan, specifically priority 2, objective 3, which is about providing high-quality education and opportunities for skill development. The third bullet point on the plan details modernization of the education system through collaborating, working with school boards, teachers, First Nations education experts to develop and implement a comprehensive K-12 curriculum. To the Minister, through the Chair, how is Budget 25-26 moving this process forward? And what does this collaboration look like? How will it ensure alignment with the recently developed elementary school curriculum?
Sure, thank you. A couple of things to unpack there, but thank you for that important question. So budget, I think the first thing to highlight is that Budget 25 includes $66 million to help support the renewal of our curriculum, our kindergarten to grade 12 curriculum. And it does include funding for school boards to assist teacher professional learning and development so that they can, of course, learn and teach successfully the new curriculum. Which is important to ensure that we're providing that level of support. The professional learning funding that school boards receive for teachers with respect to implementing the new social studies curriculum, as an example, was done at a rate of about $800 per teacher. And school boards will also be receiving funding to purchase or develop learning and teaching resources that are aligned with the new curriculum. And that's done at a rate of $45 per student. We will also provide funding to help support classroom piloting of new draft curriculum for grades 7 to 9, which we are currently underway in developing new junior high curriculum in math and social studies. And also junior high, well, to be more precise, I should say 7 to 10, physical education and wellness, career education, financial literacy, and other basic life and home maintenance skills. And, similarly with the process that we took in the development of the elementary curriculum, we will be collaborating with some of our key partners and stakeholders to assist with the development of the junior high curriculum. We do have and provide an open and transparent and collaborative process to engage with partners in developing the curriculum so that we can receive varied input and advice from key partners to help inform the development of the curriculum. Right now, we are currently engaging with a number of partners, including First Nations education directors and other organizations such as the College of Alberta Superintendents. Some of the others that we're engaging with are the Council of Catholic School Superintendents of Alberta, the Alberta Teachers Association, the Alberta School Boards Association, Alberta Catholic School Trustees Association, Public School Boards Association, and Francophone School Boards Association, and others. So we're working quite collaboratively. Right now, we are also talking extensively with teachers directly. We're engaging with just over 100 teachers who are members of our teacher curriculum consultation group that we've constituted so that teachers who are experts in particular areas can be part of these groups, and they will provide feedback on the junior high math, social studies, and then the junior high physical education and wellness, career and life management revisions that we're making. It's very important to have that teacher engagement. And these teachers are coming to us from a varied group. They have been nominated by school boards, Catholic school boards, public school boards, and others. They've also been nominated by the Alberta Teachers Association and from different geographic areas and communities. So these, as you can see, it's we're really hoping to have a collaborative process to assist in the development. And with respect to the social studies curriculum as well, which we released, just to touch on that, we released back in April of 2024. We do currently have more than 2,000 teachers piloting the new draft elementary social studies curriculum. It breaks down to about 500 schools in 62 school boards.
Would you please turn my mic on? Minister, the rule is that no one can speak for more than 5 minutes at this point, so then we just need to switch back to the team, and then if you could finish your answer. I'm sorry.
That's
I have to
okay.
abide by the rules. I just...
Very well.
Sorry.
I'll stop talking.
Thank you for your attempt to be very comprehensive in your reply. Perhaps I'll move on then. Taking a look at performance measure 4A, located on page 44 of the ministry's business plan document, it reads that attracting and retaining excellent teachers enables high learning outcomes and greater student achievement. And in 23-24, 74.5% of principals agreed that they were able to attract and retain teachers in their schools. Target for 25-26 is 74.8%, which seems like a marginal increase. I'm concerned. It seems I don't know what would be standard or what would be considered to be optimal for this type of target. Can the minister explain in budget 25-26 how does it enable principals to achieve this target? And it is 75%. Is that a reasonable objective? Is that and what's impacting that?
Yeah, sure. Happy to talk a little bit about that, and hopefully not for 5 minutes. I'll try to be a little bit more concise in my answer. My apologies. Yeah, we, of course, with having 75% of principals agreeing that they're able to attract and retain teachers in schools is a strong measure. But of course, that continues to demonstrate that there are areas where there are challenges. And we do hear about those challenges. We do hear about them from a number of school boards, including in our large municipalities, but primarily from Francophone school boards or rural school boards. And so we are talking with them in a lot of detail to see what we can do differently and how we can create the right kind of conditions for them to hire more individuals. One of the things that I'm a firm believer of, especially when it comes to rural and remote communities, has to do with educating and developing local talent. I think if we have the ability to deliver programming to more communities so that more individuals can get their BEd and other certification and qualifications needed in their home communities without having to leave their home communities, that there's a higher chance and possibility that they'll stay where they are. So I think we need to continue to have conversations with our post-secondary institutions about how we get more BEd programs delivered through our different post-secondary partners, our colleges and others into more communities. And as well, we're also looking at ways in which we can provide alternative pathways to teacher certification. This is something that we do hear about from our rural school boards in particular, that, they may have individuals in their community that have, 15, 20 years experience in a particular occupation or in a trade, but they can't come into a classroom and, provide that expertise and teach that to the next generation. There is a path for them to do that through bridging, but it's a little cumbersome. I remember speaking to a trades instructor in Grand Prairie who told me about going through a 2-year process with tens of thousands of dollars to bridge to the appropriate level of teaching certification. So that's, for someone who's in a career and working, and to go through that is quite onerous. So I think we have to be a little bit more creative in ways in which we can help individuals with specific skill set bridge to teaching, and I think that can assist. But we are trying to take some steps. I know that the Minister of Advanced Education is providing some increases to post-secondary institutions to create more spaces in Bachelor of Education programs, which will be helpful. And we did also provide 1.7 million in funding to the University of Calgary and the University of Alberta to expand spaces at their Bachelor of Education programs, with a particular lens towards rural recruitment and remote recruitment as well, and for Indigenous teachers as well. So these are some of.
Thank you, Minister. Back over to the official opposition. Shared or block time?
Shared.
Shared time, Minister? Shared, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the Minister for the overview, as well as the department team for the background work on the overall budget. On page 44 of the business plan, the key objective 4.5 addresses classroom complexities through specialized learning, sports, and improved access to qualified professionals and educational support workers. So apart from the key indicator that you have for that, apart from the general survey that is provided, how does the ministry measure the classroom complexities to figure out whether it is adequately managed and the students get the support they need?
Yeah, I think quantitative data and metric analysis is important. It's something for us to explore to make sure that we're actually making an impact. But I think the other piece is of course qualitative data and analysis. In our conversations with school boards, the Alberta Teachers Association, and other groups and organizations, we can through qualitative measures and discussions get a better understanding of how the classroom conditions are improving and whether our efforts are achieving the measurable impact that we expect. Also, through some of the grants, the Classroom Complexity Grant, as an example, of being grant-based, the school divisions, of course, have to submit their proposals as to how they intend to use the grant, and so we are able to see from the administration of the grant what types of resources are being secured and what kind of applications are being made. So that gives us a window. And furthermore, I should mention, of course, we do have our annual education reports, the AERR, which is our primary accountability measure to ensure that we are achieving our intended objectives and goals. So using these different measures, I'm confident we can achieve success.
Thanks, there is an opportunity of triangulation in terms of measuring it, but when you look into your targets versus the Alberta Teachers Association that shows significantly majority of the school leaders, actually 9 out of 10, report an increase of complexities, but in terms of your target, it's not indicating that. So I'm concerned how the public should know about the management of classroom complexity so that we can adequately resource through the budget.
Yeah, well, there is no question. We are seeing increased complexity in our classrooms. We are seeing many more challenges, and a significant component of that is partly attributed to an increase in population. Of course, you have more individuals, you have more instances of complexity. We have as well seen increases in certain student demographics and profiles that can lend themselves to more complexity and challenge. For example, over the past 4 years, the percentage of refugee students in our system has increased by 34%. And we've had significant increases as well in students with that require support or have English as an additional language. In addition as well, there's a greater availability of assessment, and I think most parents would agree and understand that there's more kids that are being identified
today than before with complex needs, learning disabilities. And I think part of this is a degree of demonstration of success. You know, we've talked about early screening in kindergarten and in grades 1 and 3. And so if we're implementing that screening, we could be identifying more students that with dyslexia or that need other supports. And so the identification of those students is a good indicator that of where we're at and what kind of supports that we need to provide. But our objective and our understanding is clear. We are seeing more complexity in our classrooms, and we are providing more resources to our school boards and having some broader policy conversations to explore how we can work together to address these challenges.
Yeah, through the chair, another challenge I'm glad that you pointed out that there is an increase in terms of need because of the either population growth or through the classroom other complexities that we are encountering in terms of an increased number of children requiring support. Over the last 2 months, educational support workers are not in classrooms, and students are neither in classrooms. Parents, children with special needs are homeschooling because they have no other choice. With all these challenges through the chair, can the minister inform the committee how line 3.2 of the estimates will fix this problem? How will the objective be achieved when we're already seeing that educational support workers not showing up to the work?
Sure, just to just to continue, because my officials were able to provide some more information, but in terms of the measures, we do have additional measures around classroom complexity that aren't highlighted in the business plan. So for example, we do track and report the satisfaction of students, parents, teachers, and school board members that a school is providing a safe, caring, and healthy learning environment. So we do track that measure separately. We also track another measure, which is the agreement of students, parents, teachers, and school board members that students can access supports and services in a timely manner. So those are the two main measures, but we do have, again, some of the other pieces that I mentioned. In terms of support staff, sorry, I'm going to have to get a reminder of your question. It's just escaping my mind.
The problem is that I'll give you an example of my writing. On a snapshot, I have hundreds of support staff that are not showing up the schools that are in Edmonton Decor.
Right.
In Baldwin School, 23 support workers are not showing up. Delwood, 12. Evansdale 17, Florence Hall 15, Glengarry 10, John Burnett 9, Emily Lizard 33 of their support workers are not showing up. So how will you achieve objective 4.5 when support workers are not showing up?
Yeah, and I know that some of our support staff are currently on strike and working through that process. Of course, with many of our support staff, salaries, wages, benefits, and other conditions are discussions and agreements that are facilitated directly between their union and the school boards directly. Provincial government is not involved in any negotiations with those unions directly. Those unions, of course, and their members have initiated strike action in some instances. I hope, and my hope is that the school board and the striking unions can find a way to get back to the conversation, get back to the negotiating table, and find the best possible way to resolve the challenges that they're experiencing, because at the end of the day, as you've mentioned, we need to ensure that students are able to receive the best possible level of support.
Well, through the chair, what is the contingency plan? Like I'm focused on the business plan that you tabled that shows that an objective 4.5 that is at risk if those support workers don't show up. So what is the ministry's contingency plan?
Yeah, so the the individual boards do have contingency plans, and we do have some conversations with them to see if there's any way in which we can assist them with their contingency plans or operations. But many of them do have plans in place and are executing those plans. They vary, of course, from school jurisdiction to school jurisdiction. We do work with them as best we can to explore how we can support any of their contingency plans that they want to implement.
And through the chair, does budget 25 has any contingency wage increase allocated in case those contingency plans with the school authorities don't work?
We provide, of course, the funding to our school boards, and many of our school boards do have reserves, and they manage their own finances and operations that they can use.
Thank you, Minister. Over to the government side, shared or block time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to do share time if the minister is agreeable to it.
Minister? All right.
Yep,
Please proceed, member.
Wonderful, thank you. First off, I just want to thank the minister and his team for all of the hard work that he's done. I know this is no easy task, but I appreciate the work and the budget that's been put forward to us. I just have a couple of questions, and I just want to first focus on Performance Measure 4B. Performance Measure 4B on page 45 of the ministry's business plan highlights satisfaction that schools provide a safe, caring, and healthy learning environment. According to the information provided, 84.1% of the students, parents, teachers, and school board members were satisfied in this category. My first question to the minister, through you, Chair, what factors are behind these different demographics feeling that schools are indeed safe, caring, and healthy learning environments?
Sure, thank you. Important question, and as you've noted, every year we do conduct those provincial satisfaction surveys to get some feedback from students and parents and others, of course, being important partners such as teachers, principals, and school board members, and the general public as well, as it relates to their perception and opinion of Alberta's education system. So we conduct approximately more than 6,000 surveys as a consequence of this, and we do work to ensure that survey results for each of the 10 respondent groups are received so that they can be accurately and statistically represented. So we do work to ensure that we have statistically accurate sample sizes. And the survey responses, just for some additional information, are completely confidential, and no individual responses are reported, but they're aggregated and reported in that fashion. Participation is, of course, important because it helps to provide some valuable insight and information to help the ministry identify areas of strength and areas where we need to conduct a little bit more work. And it also helps to provide a more accountable and transparent education system. Some of the factors that are considered for this metric include student, teacher, and parent agreement that students feel safe at school, and that teachers care about students, and that students are learning about how to stay healthy. So those are some of the specific aspects that we measure in those surveys.
Thank you for the answer. My second question is just a continuation. The target for 2025-2026 is 84.3%, which is a 0.2% increase from the previous year. How is budget 2025-2026 working to ensure that this target's reached?
Yeah, well, thank you. Very important question. And we are, the short answer is we are providing some supports to help ensure that we are moving in the right direction, and then subsequently, of course, increasing those scores. So it is a priority for the government to ensure that students are happy and satisfied with their learning environment, and that's one of the reasons, of course, why it's specifically measured, because we want to ensure that there's satisfaction in that regard. And targets, you did note that it's a 0.2% increase, so it's important that we have aspirational but realistic targets as well. that are achievable within the time frame as well, because that's an increase over the year. So we want to make sure that that's something that's achievable and realistic. One of the things that we're doing in Budget 25 specifically is some considerable work to ensure that we're enhancing student well-being, and that's being done by investing $35 million in this budget to provide mental health supports, learning support, and other wellness support for students. That will help ensure that we're doing what we can to provide the right kind of learning environment and learning conditions that will subsequently help students feel safe and satisfied with their environment, and help to move those measures forward. In addition, we are also partnering with the Ministry of Children's Services for the Alberta Mentoring Partnership and to facilitate mentoring in schools. And we do also support anti-bullying initiatives such as Respect in Schools and other programs and initiatives. So again, all of these combined, we're confident will help move the measures in the right direction and help ensure that students feel safe and happy at school.
Wonderful, thank you for that. My next question, you've touched on it a little bit, but I, understanding that we have 5 minutes to speak, I wanted to give you a bit more of a chance to elaborate on it. Performance measure 4C, located on page number 45 of the business plan, regards agreement that students can access supports and services in a timely manner. The document goes on to say that timely access to supports and services fosters effective learning. In 2023-2024, 73.9% of students, parents, teachers, and school board members agreed that there was timely access to student supports and services. The target outline for 2025-2026 cites 74.2%. My two questions are, would the minister outline what sort of supports and services are available, perhaps in greater detail than before, for students to access? And given that there are a variety of geographic, demographic, and other assorted needs in each school, what constitutes a timely matter? And second, how does Budget 2025-2026 improve timelines when it comes to accessing these supports and services?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, providing timely access to services is important, and again, another reason why that's measured specifically and outlined in the business plan. So we do work very carefully with our partners in the education system to make sure that we're achieving those goals. In addition, with partners in the education system, school boards, Teachers Association, and other groups, we do also work collaboratively with other ministries that touch on this area. That would of course be Children's Services, Community and Social Services, Mental Health and Addiction Health, and others. Those are the primary ministries that we work together with to help achieve improvement in this area and help ensure that there are timely access to services. Some of the specific areas where we do provide support, which I should note are all increasing. In Budget 25, we are providing a 2.32% increase to a number of different grants that are all in the category of specialized learning needs. So this bucket goes specifically to address the specialized learning needs of students. So these ones include, I'll go through them here. PUF, program unit funding. This is being, all of these are being increased by 2.32%. The specialized learning support grant is also increasing. The moderate language delay grant is increasing. English as an additional language. First Nations, Métis and Inuit education, refugee students, socioeconomic status grant, geographic grant, school nutrition grant, francophone equivalency grant, which I should note will actually be increasing by 25% instead of the 2.32% that the others will be increasing by. And this is being done to address increased costs associated with providing equivalent minority language education. And the classroom complexity grant is also increasing by 20%, and this is being increased above the others, given some of the conversation that we've had here today about the increasing complexity in our classrooms and the need to do more there. To answer the second part of your question, we are changing our funding approach, and we are changing to the 2-year average adjusted enrollment method, which will provide funding at 30% for the current year and 70% for the upcoming year. And that will subsequently provide school boards with greater certainty of funding, and those specific funding letters will be coming shortly to our school boards. But the change in funding does reinforce the government's commitment to provide stable and predictable funding to help ensure that growing school divisions receive funding in a faster way, and that smaller, perhaps declining or stagnating school jurisdictions are also shielded from sudden and significant variances in their funding, which can cause significant impacts as well. So these are the pieces that we're working on to help move those measures forward.
Wonderful, thank you for that. I know we're almost out of time, but one last question just in regards to this. On the topic of 4.2 on page number 44 of the Alberta Education Business Plan, again, that is to revise the K-12 education funding framework to provide more funding to school authorities. I know a one-size-fits-all model for funding won't work for the entire province, and you touched on it a little bit, but to balance Alberta's diversity, your ministry provides grant funding to address the varied and diverse needs of Alberta's school boards. Would you mind outlining how much funding will be provided in budget 2025 to support the grant rate increase?
Wow, we ran out of time. So sorry, member. Now we'll go back over to the official opposition. Shared or block time?
Shared.
Minister?
Yeah,
All right,
that's fine.
please proceed.
I can stay on the business plan theme here because I had a few questions around that. One of the things that I often do is go back and compare to 2019 levels on some of these metrics, coming out of 4 years of a different government then. So measure 4B that the member opposite just mentioned, actually it's 2% lower now than after 4 years of NDP tenure in government. Another one I thought was I'll get to a question, but this is just my interesting fun facts. 3B, satisfaction with opportunities to receive a broad program of studies. That's actually had a 3.5% decline since 2019, which I think could potentially speak to the choice in education, because it turns out that students, parents, and teachers are less satisfied with their variety of learning opportunities than they were 6 years ago. But for my question, I want to focus on performance measure 1C, which is students who achieve the acceptable level on PATs, because not only are these numbers significantly lower than they were in 2019, but they're on a continuous decline. We talked about this measure last year, so to refresh our memories, since 2019 we have seen the percentage of students achieving an acceptable standard in language arts drop 10%. In math, it's a decrease of 14%. And now that math number dropped 1.5% just between last year and this year. And the targets the minister has set in the business plan don't see a goal to return to last year's level of math scores until 2026. And given the way these numbers have dropped every single year under the UCP's tenure in government, I don't really know where to find the confidence to believe that these numbers will do anything but go down again. And I know last year when we talked about this performance measure that the minister spoke about COVID learning loss as a cause for declining scores. I believe that all funding for COVID learning gaps has finished, and yet test scores keep dropping. Through the chair, these test scores are quite concerning. What is the minister's plan to address the year-over-year declines, and when can we expect students to return to 2019 levels of achievement?
Yeah, thank you. A very important question. I think there's a couple of pieces to that. Certainly, as we had discussed last time as well, COVID has had a unique impact on learning loss and students' achievement and ability. And it's not something that's been demonstrated in Alberta, but in other provinces and around the world. I know when the latest PISA results rankings came in, yes, Alberta led the pack, but there was still significant decline from previous years, and that was replicated across other provinces and other jurisdictions. I think the overall analysis of the PISA results globally was that there has been decline broadly in student achievement levels, which again I think is partly attributed to the significant interruptions that occurred during COVID. But in spite of all of that, I think a lot of folks were really pleased to see that Alberta continued to lead Canada and continue to be a leader internationally in our scores. When it comes to our PATs and other scores, diploma scores, obviously it's something that we're very interested in and something that we pay a lot of attention to. Part of the reason why we're making some significant increases and updates to curriculum to make sure that we can remain globally competitive. Much of our curriculum hasn't been updated in a significant period of time. I think our computer science curriculum is 20 years old. So we need to continue to update. Gosh, I don't even know what technology looked like 20 years ago. Maybe people were still using faxes or something. Punch cards. Yeah, punch and clock. So we recognize that to make sure that our PAT and international scores and other scores continue to excel, we need to aggressively pursue curriculum reform. We can't be operating with 20-year-old computer science curriculum, so we need to move forward quickly to update that. But as well, we're also taking steps, as we mentioned earlier, through early intervention. We talked a little bit about literacy and numeracy screening being mandatory now for students in kindergarten and grades 1 to 3. This will this is a significant new development. I can't overemphasize how critical this development is. So many other provinces, I know both British Columbia and Saskatchewan, are currently engaging in conversations with my ministry to get more information about what we did, how we did it, when we did it, because they are very much interested in implementing the same type of approach. And so the early literacy and numeracy screening is particularly important because it can help us to identify learning challenges very early and give students targeted intervention, and that will pay dividends in subsequent years and will help increase student scores in the future as well. So there's not one specific action or strategy that can be implemented to bring all of these scores up, but we need to address complexity. We need to provide early intervention, targeted language supports, and other aspects. So we're taking action in all of these areas to help ensure that these scores improve and increase.
And so on your literacy, numeracy screeners, we've talked about them a number of times. They identify the learning challenges. And you've mentioned targeted interventions. So how much funding is being provided to deliver those targeted interventions to kids who are identified through your screeners as having an extra need?
Yeah, I'll pull the exact numbers up. If memory serves me correct, it's about 30 million over the course of the 3 years. But I'll get you the year-by-year breakdown.
It's
40 million. I lied. I lied. Apologies. It's 40 million over the next 3 years. That's going to literacy and numeracy support. And again, I'll try and find the specific breakdown on the year-by-year for you. But that funding is going to our school boards so that they can conduct the interventions that are required as identified by the screening, because we can do as much screening as we want, but if we don't have dedicated resources available to school boards so that they can hire additional staff or increase hours of EAs or whatever needs to occur to conduct the necessary interventions, then it's not really that beneficial. So one of the things that we have heard in feedback from our school boards when we implemented the screeners was that we need to make sure we can conduct the interventions. We need to make sure that we have some more targeted support. So the breakdown will be 12 this year, 14 next year, and 16 in the third year. So 40 million in total over the next 3 years to support that work.
And just to confirm, so that is new funding that you're adding this year?
That's correct. This is a new grant. This is a new line item that school boards will receive. And this is on top of classroom complexity funding that school boards will receive. So again, classroom complexity funding can be used to hire occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, EAs, or other support staff, and other funding that is provided through the English as an Additional Language grant, the Refugee Student Grant, specialized learning SLS grant. So this is on top of all of that. And again, for a very specific purpose to hire staff to execute and implement interventions.
Got it. Super quick one. When the member for Edmonton Decor was talking, you mentioned some satisfaction measures that aren't included in the business plan. Can you table those?
They're posted publicly.
Are they public somewhere?
Yeah,
Okay.
my understanding is they're posted publicly.
Ah,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay,
No
I will
worries.
find them. Okay, one more on the business plan. Metric 2B, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students. The minister will know they're still lagging the rest of the population on high school completion and transition to post-secondary rates. So 19% fewer First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students complete high school, and 23% fewer transition to a post-secondary program upon completion of high school. Is the minister satisfied with these rates, and why are the goals to increase these rates so modest?
Short answer, no, not satisfied. More needs to happen, and I think there was a question from another member of the committee earlier that talked where I had the opportunity to talk in a little bit more detail about some of the specific work that we're undertaking to help increase those scores. And in recent years, we have seen improvement in those scores, both in terms of high school completion and in post-secondary participation. So that is encouraging, but we still need to keep working in that area. And I did have an opportunity to talk about some of the funding that is provided, if memory serves me correct, it's about 95 million to support First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students, and we'll continue to work in that area.
Thank you, Minister. Over to the government side. Member blocked or shared time?
Shared that.
Minister,
Shared.
please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. First Minister, I appreciate you being here with us today, and I also want to acknowledge the works you have done in the ministry in ensuring the delivery of a student-centered education systems that promotes the success of children and students, developing the knowledge, skills, and expertise they need to pursue their career interest and make a meaningful contributions to their communities and the world. And through Chair, my questions are on the performance measure 3A and key objective 3A located on page number 43 of the business plan measures satisfaction with career education opportunities. The information provided indicates that effective career planning enables students to enter the labor force or post-secondary programs. In 2023-2024, 69.3% of students, parents, teachers, and school board members were satisfied that students receive the necessary supports to plan for career or life after school. And I see the target for 2025-2026 is 69.5%. And could the minister please explain how school choice improves the metrics?
Well, thank you so much, MLA Singh. Thank you for the important question. Yeah, satisfaction with career education opportunities is critically important and something that our government wants to strengthen. We believe firmly that we need to do more and provide more students with career education opportunities and exposure, and obviously measuring the level of satisfaction with career education programming and opportunities is a critically important variable. As I mentioned earlier, one of the significant components of our budget this year is about $102 million investment over the next 3 years for career education programming. This will go to a number of different areas. Will go to help school boards expand dual credit opportunities, help them with collegiate startup costs and continued ongoing costs and other areas. And these are it's critically important, as I mentioned. I do want to highlight as well that having options and having choice in our education system helps to facilitate this objective. If we have different collegiate programming or charter school options or varied options out there, we can help to create a higher degree of satisfaction when students and families are able to explore more diverse programming that really meets their needs and explores different career opportunities and options, because of course not all students are on the same path. Students are looking at different options, and providing choice helps to improve those measures. We did talk earlier about collegiate programs as well, so I won't go into that in a lot of detail, but again, their ability to provide really targeted learning in specific areas can dramatically increase satisfaction for students participating in those programs. And I do want to talk just very briefly as well about, I mentioned some of our charter school partners that as well provide STEM or vocation-based programming and other investments that we're making. So these measures that we're undertaking will help us to move those metrics forward.
Thanks for the answer, Minister. And through Chair, my next set of questions are on Performance Measure 3C. And on page 44 of the business plan, I note that the Performance Indicator 3C tracks the average number of career education credits completed per high school student. The document indicates that tracking average credits completed in career education provides insight on how students are taking advantage of these career education opportunities. In looking at the information provided, I see that the average number of career education credits completed per high school student was 6.4% in 2019-2020, while it was 7.3 in 2023-2024. Could the Minister please explain what factors are behind the growth in this average?
Sure, thank you. I'd be happy to touch on that. Yeah, an important metric, and this is actually a new addition to our business plan. So happy to have the opportunity to provide a little bit more information about this new measure. The indicator does help to highlight and speak to our commitment to support schools and school boards to expand student participation in career education. And as I mentioned earlier, we know how valuable it is for students and the benefits that are derived from student exposure to different career pathways and opportunities. And we really want to see participation in career programming expand and grow and increase. It's one of the reasons why we're investing in collegiate schools, as we've talked about over the course of this morning. It's why we're investing in dual credit opportunities, and we're supporting career and technology studies, and as well the registered apprenticeship program, which the latter gives students an opportunity to begin apprenticeship education while they're in high school. Now, it can be challenging to pinpoint specific causes for the increases in credits, but we are seeing that increase, which is welcome. And we do know that we have been providing increased funding over the course of the past few years, so we think that there can be a correlation there between additional funding for dual credit grants, which increased from $2 million in 2019-20 to $4 million in 23-24, so a significant increase in what's been provided there. And we're also working closely with our school boards and other partners to understand what is really needed, like what are the real barriers and challenges to student participation, and what can we do further to help increase student participation. And in 21, they did provide us with some feedback. They did note some challenges that they felt were impacting student participation in career education programming. One of the things that we heard was a lack of industry connection at the school level for work-integrated learning opportunities. We also heard a need for some more coordinated off-campus career programming. And we also heard just generally a lack of awareness among students about the options that are available to them. So we have taken some steps to try and address this. We have been partnering with groups like Careers, The Next Generation, which is an organization that works directly with school boards across the province to increase student participation in career programming. And so we have worked with them to help create some more awareness and expand exposure of their programs in our schools. And I'm happy to say that based on interest from school boards, we expanded the agreement in '24 to help more school boards be a part of their programming, because there was a lot of interest. We did also, in September of '22, convene the Career Education Task Force, which brought together industry partners, post-secondary partners, school boards, and others to help inform steps that can be taken. And we are working to implement the recommendations of the Career Education Task Force, which provided a number of recommendations to government about what can be done to enhance exposure and awareness of career education options and opportunities. Just very recently, we also created the Dual Credit Advisory Group in 2024, which similarly provided some ideas and recommendations to government about things that we can do to help increase awareness and participation into dual credit programming. And one of the things that we've heard as it relates to dual credit programming had to do with funding, and that's being reflected in Budget 25, as we're now providing over $100 million over the next 3 years in additional funding to help support career education programs and dual credits. So that is helping to implement some of those recommendations. Perhaps in the last few seconds that I have left, I can just give you an overview of kind of where we're at based on the 23-24 school year. There's approximately 148,000 students in high school participating in career and technology studies non-apprenticeship programming, 15,000 students participating in high school apprenticeship programming, 17,000 students participating in dual credit, and 2,800 students participating in career education programming in partnership with a post-secondary institution. So some strong numbers there.
Thank you, Minister. Back over to the official opposition and Chair to block time.
Share it still.
Minister?
Yeah, sure, it's fine.
Thank you through the chair. Minister, so you've made a change to the weighted moving average to move it to a 2-year average. There's still an expectation, particularly for our growing boards, that they are going to have a number of underfunded students. So one board estimated it as saying if they had 3,000 last year, they're going to have 1,000 in the coming year. Can the minister confirm for me, because I have heard that some folks think that the Supplemental Enrollment Growth Grant has been removed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but I do see mention of continued enrollment projection funding on page 75 of the fiscal plan. So can you please talk to us about your funding plan for in-year student additions if you have canceled that growth grant, enrollment growth grant?
Yeah, so the Supplemental Enrollment Growth Grant was brought in partly due to the significant increase in enrollment that we've seen over the past few years. So, many of our metro school boards experiencing some significant pressure as they experienced dramatic increases in enrollment, and then working with a weighted moving average, they were experiencing some challenges. So the Supplemental Enrollment Growth Grant was brought in to help supplement funding and address some of those challenges. There's a couple of reasons. You noted that we're no longer providing the Supplemental Enrollment Growth Grant. There's a couple of reasons for that, and we do anticipate that the current funding approach will be able to satisfy the needs of our school board. So one of the factors is the fact that moving to a 2-year versus a 3-year funding model will help to distribute funds in a faster way to school boards. So they'll receive full funding for all of their allotted students in 2 years versus the 3 years. So that one change will be particularly important and will help provide, I think it was about $50 million in the current year to school boards just by making that single change. So that's one piece. Then the second reason is because based on projections and forecasts from our school boards, we anticipate enrollment levels to return to more normal levels of growth, which have typically been around 2 to 3%. And so we do anticipate, based on their projections, that we will return to those normal levels. So that would negate the requirement for the supplemental enrollment growth grant as well. And we'll explore how enrollment, what enrollment looks like in future years. But again, based on projections from our school boards and from Treasury Board and Finance with respect to population levels generally, we do anticipate that those levels will return to more normal growth rates. But with the 2-year, I should also highlight just very quickly that we are basing 70% off of projection. So obviously it's important to be as precise as we can, as the school boards can be in their projection, but with 70% of their funding coming from next year's projection, that gives them a little bit of flexibility and latitude with funding as well.
Perfect, thank you. I just want to go back on some capital questions. Charter schools now, I'm assuming that because I know that the government has made a commitment to double charter school spaces in Alberta over the next 7 years. I haven't seen announcements, but I'm assuming that might be coming in your announcement next week. So I'm just wondering what the process is for approving charter school construction. Are these projects put through the same gated process as our public school builds? We have public boards, as I've mentioned a few times today, that are rapidly moving towards an over 100% occupancy. So I'm just wondering if the minister can talk us through the process for deciding which charters get to jump the queue in front of these highly overcrowded public boards.
Yeah, happy to talk a little bit more about that. Our public charter schools will move through the same process, through the SCAP process, and will be identified, based on enrollment projections and community need and population, similar to the same parameters that we're using in terms of deciding which school projects will be moving forward in our capital submission. So we're using the same criteria, looking at enrollment and looking at pressures in communities and in municipalities. We will continue to use the gated process and 3 stages, so the projects will move through planning and design and construction just as other projects are moving through as well. To help ensure that we're following the right process and procedure, and that we are fully accountable and transparent with how these projects are moving forward. So that's how we'll be proceeding with many of those.
Do your charter schools do public reporting of their utilization rates, or is that just direct to the ministry?
It's a good question. I would have to maybe get back to you on that. Let me ask my team here and see if we do have public reporting on their utilization rates.
Okay, thank you. I'm just another one on sort of our alternate school providers. So education funding was kept to that increase of 4.5% overall, but on page 69 of the government estimates, line 4.1, I see an increase of 15% for private school support. Can the minister please provide an explanation of this line item and a rationale for why it grew at a rate 3 times the operating increase for education funding?
Yeah, most of the funding is, of course, determined based on enrollment growth. Our provincial school authorities have seen an enrollment increase of 2.5%, whereas our independent schools are projecting an enrollment increase of 7.5%. So they're expecting and anticipating, and our ECS operators are projecting an enrollment growth of about 9%. So I'm sorry, I misspoke there. And public school jurisdictions are expecting to see a 2.2% increase in enrollment growth. So public schools are looking to see a 2.2% increase. Early childhood services 9%, and independent schools 7.5%. So of course, funding is then distributed based on enrollment levels. So that's why you see some of the variance there.
What's the formula that the government's using for funding allocations between public, charter, private schools?
Yeah, thank you. It's the same formula. There's no variance, and they're all funded based on the 2-year average adjusted. So they receive, the rates are the rates, and they receive they receive funding in allotment of the rates. The only variance is that independent providers and ECS providers as well, or just just the independent providers. My apologies. Just the independent providers receive 70% of the rate. So whatever the rate is, they public, Catholic, charter receive 100%. Independent schools will receive 70%.
Okay, and so Alberta public school students are the lowest, or among the lowest, I guess, if Mr. Fletcher was correct in his article, in the country, and have been since the UCP took office. So the rate that we had calculated for 2023 was $11,464 per student. Looks like it's around $12,000 a student for 2025. So do you know your funding allocation per student in the private system? Do you just take 70% of that number? Is that how that works?
I have to defer to Jeff on that one.
So can you just repeat the question with respect to, you're asking for what we fund on a per student basis, or?
Yes, yeah,
Yes,
what you fund on
okay,
a per student
sure.
basis, yes.
Thank you. So our funding is determined based on the funding that we provide to school divisions as public, separate, and charter schools are public. So when you look at the funding manual for school authorities, it will be posted later this month. You will see a rate structure in there for all school authority types. So there'll be public and separate, but there'll also be the independent school section, which will outline all of the rates. And so those rates are typically 70% of the public and separate rate. So you'll see that across a number of their grants. And so you can find that in the funding manual, again, as I said, that will be published publicly towards the end of this month.
Thank you. I'm not going to have time to ask this question, so you're not going to have time to answer it. But on transportation, I know the government has walked back their promise to reduce those walk distances. I had figures last year for transportation. I was hoping the minister could update for this year. 335.
Thank you so much, member. We'll move back over to the government side. Shared or block time, member.
Shared time, if it's all right with the minister.
Minister?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair. When you arrive late to the committee, you get the last block, so I'll see what I can do. First off, obviously, a big thank you to the minister and his officials and his support staff. Really appreciate all your hard work and for joining us today. I did want to ask a question on Francophone education. And this is, of course, particularly an important issue for me, having Beaumont in my riding. And I know that Francophone education is so important to many residents of Beaumont. In fact, I was able to attend a Francophone school opening not too long ago and in Beaumont, and it was really impressive to see the new facility. And it was really exciting to get to talk to the principal and the school officials and the school board, and just how excited they were with their new facility. So it's obviously an important piece of our education system. In fact, it's one of the Francophone education is one of the pillars of educational choice in Alberta. And I understand that Francophone schools are also experiencing significant growth and challenges related to staffing and building school projects, with some of these challenges unique to their linguistic mandate. So through the chair, I note that under the ministry fact sheet on page number 39 of the business plan, it states that the department works to ensure eligible students have access to Francophone education while encouraging opportunities for French education through French language programs. So through the chair to the minister, how does Alberta Education work with the Francophone community to establish where schools are needed?
Yeah, thank you. Very important question. And we do work very closely with our Francophone partners to help support programming and help to identify school sites that are needed and subsequently build and construct those schools. And we do value French first language education, and we do want to work with them to see how we can deliver high quality French language programming. In April of 23, one of the things that we did is we did establish a working group with representatives from our 4 Francophone school boards and Alberta Infrastructure and Treasury Board and Finance, so that we could all sit down at the table together to review and address Francophone capital concerns and get on the same page, and do that within the context of minority language education rights under Section 23 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Through this collaboration, the working group reviews capital planning practices, and we sit down and discuss processes as well as implement policy solutions. And each year, our Francophone regional authorities do submit of course, first they assess and then subsequently submit their capital needs, and they provide us with their assessment of what the priority projects are. And then those are evaluated against criteria that we use for all of our Francophone regional authorities to help ensure that we're preserving and promoting French language education. And so that's the primary mechanism by which we conduct that analysis, and we prioritize and make a decision about which schools to build and where to build them.
Great, thanks for that background. That's really important. If I just a quick follow-up, as always, through the chair, are you aware of how many Francophone school capital projects does Budget 2025 fund? And is there any further funding to explore future projects?
Everybody wants to get me to scoop my school announcements here. Maybe we'll have to do that before next time. So yes, there are currently 15 active school projects throughout the province that are specifically oriented towards providing French education. There are 5 in Calgary, 3 in Edmonton, 1 in Airdrie, followed Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche, Lethbridge, Plamondon, and Sherwood Park. We will have some information about future Francophone capital projects in the coming days. But as part of our commitment to Francophone education, we do have in Budget 25, we have set aside $2 million in pre-planning funding that's to help support site readiness and help conduct some of that preliminary planning for Francophone school projects. And it's quite the pre-planning funding is quite helpful. It can be used to help determine site selection and help ensure site readiness, scope of development for the project, and other pieces.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly would never want to get out in front of the Minister of making his exciting announcements. In fact, I'm looking forward to additional potential announcements in the next week or so. I would like to maybe close by coming back around to the public charter schools. I know you were able to touch briefly on that previously. It's obviously a big part of school choice in Alberta, and I can tell you when I talk to parents and constituents in my office, they're very appreciative of school choice in Alberta and what an important role that plays. So I would like to again through the chair ask the minister, how does Budget 25-26 support school choice, and what school options are available to Alberta students and parents?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight just how important school choice is. Definitely something that our government firmly believes in, and we believe fundamentally in school choice because we fundamentally believe that parents, not politicians or trustees, are in the best position to make the educational choices for their children. And we have to create the right environment and conditions that support choice so that parents have the ability to make those decisions. To answer your question in a little bit more detail, part of achieving the objective is to promote greater choice, as I mentioned, and create the conditions. Right now, some of the options that are available include public, separate, Francophone, public charter, independent, and home education. So there's a range of different options and opportunities. And even within those, embedded within those, embedded within the public and the charter and independent, are even more diverse and tailored programming. There's programming specifically for students with specialized learning needs. We have schools specifically for students with autism or specifically for students with ADHD. Within our public, we have all boys or all girls schools. We have STEM-focused charter schools. We have a range of different options, even, language, I should say cultural and language and religiously oriented programming. I was in Northeast Calgary visiting the Khalsa Sikh School recently, and just talking as recently as last night with Edmonton Islamic school leaders and others. So this range of programming is one of the things that I believe makes Alberta's education system strong and robust. And again, we firmly believe in giving parents the options to choose what's best for their kids.
My apologies, Minister, for the interruption, but I must advise the committee that the time allotted for consideration of the ministry's estimates has concluded. I'd like to remind committee members that we are scheduled to meet later today, March 11th at 7 p.m. to consider the estimates of the Ministry of Service Alberta and Red Tape Reduction. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.